Deadly Devotion is a dark romance audiobook by Amy Seymour. Narrated by Phoebe Lane, Andrew Whitman, and Abel West. Prologue.
The smell of iron clung to the air in the room, sharp and metallic. I should have been horrified. Kyle lay on the bare floor, his hands pressed to the gunshot wound in his stomach. Blood soaked through his shirt, each breath bubbling and breaking in his throat. He tried to speak my name, his voice jagged and small, but it came out more like a cough than a plea. But I had stopped looking at him. Federico had me pinned against the wall, his body crushing mine, his grip unrelenting. His mouth wasn't gentle. It devoured. His teeth grazed my lip hard enough to sting, his tongue forced me open, his breath hot and urgent as though he needed to consume me just to breathe. He growled when I resisted, low and guttural, like some great animal warning me there was no escape. His hands roamed my body without hesitation, palms rough, fingers bruising, as though testing the weight of his new possession. He lifted me effortlessly, pinning me harder, his hips driving forward with a savage rhythm that left no room for pretense. Kyle coughed again. His voice cracked, hoarse. "Rachel, please call 911. The sound barely reached me. Federico's growl drowned it out. Each thrust shook through me like a claim. Each bite against my skin left a mark that told the room who I belonged to now. He wasn't making love. He was conquering, branding me with every brutal movement, making sure there was no doubt. Rachael Hathaway was no longer Kyle's possession. And I let him. No, I welcomed it. My nails raked down his back, my legs locked tighter around him, pulling him closer, deeper, as though daring him to break me apart. I didn't even flinch when Kyle's hand stretched toward me from the floor, leaving a smear of blood across the marble. His cries blurred into background noise, meaningless against the feverish heat of Federico's body driving me higher, harder. My fiancé was dying 3 feet away, and I was utterly, shamelessly lost in the man who had shot him. The encroaching pool of Kyle's blood had reached my shoe, warm against the leather. I didn't move my foot, because in that moment he wasn't a man anymore. He was already a carcass, an intruder ousted from his place. And Federico, the lion who had overthrown him, was staking his claim the way beasts in the wild always did. Now, at this point, you're wondering what kind of woman ignores her fiancé's death rattle for the growl of another man's mouth. You're thinking I must be a very cold woman. I can feel your judgment already. She's a monster. She's a whore. A sociopath. And you're right. I'm 31. I know the difference between right and wrong. I'm not the good girl in this story. I never was. I've spent too long pretending to be, but the truth has always been there, hidden beneath polite smiles and quiet obedience. Federico saw at the moment he looked into my eyes. He didn't just take me, he unveiled me. And Kyle? He only gave me the gift of showing who I truly was by underestimating me. So yes, while he bled and begged, I arched into Federico's hunger and welcomed the fire that burned me clean. But don't mistake me. This isn't where the story begins. No, this is only where the masks fell away. If you really want to know how I came here, to this moment, with Kyle choking on his last breath while I surrendered to Federico, you'll have to go back with me. To the night of the wager. To the smoke-filled poker table where Kyle thought he could outplay the house. And to the moment I learned, the house always wins.
A quick one before we continue. If you're loving this audiobook, smash that like button and subscribe so you never miss our latest uploads.
Chapter 1. The House.
The smoke from Cuban cigars curled through the amber light of the underground poker room, creating shadows that danced across faces I'd learned to read like prayer books. Each tell, each micro-expression, each bead of sweat, They all whispered secrets to those who knew how to listen. It was nearly midnight when I first heard her voice. "Kyle, are you still there? You said you'd be home by 10. The voice drifted through the phone pressed against Kyle Stevens' ear, cutting through the testosterone-thick atmosphere like a blade through silk. Clean, untouched, curious. I didn't believe in angels, but I believed in trophies. Kyle, a man who wore desperation like an expensive cologne that couldn't quite mask the stench beneath, fumbled with his cards while trying to silence the call. "Yeah, babe. Just give me another hour. I've got a big hand coming up." Another hour. The fool had been saying that for the past 4 hours. I studied him across the green felt table, noting the way his pupils dilated when he looked at his cards, the unconscious scratch at his neck when he was bluffing, the slight tremor in his hands that had nothing to do with caffeine and everything to do with the $60,000 debt crushing his shoulders like a marble headstone. "Who's the girl?" I asked, my voice cutting through the ambient chatter of the other players. Phil Thompson, a real estate developer with more money than sense, and Scott Byrne, a hedge fund prince who thought poker was just another boardroom negotiation. Kyle's eyes darted to mine, then away. "My fiancée. Rachel." "Rachel," I repeated, letting the name roll off my tongue like wine I was considering purchasing. "She sounds concerned. She worries too much." Kyle tried to inject confidence into his voice, but it cracked like thin ice. "Women, you know." I didn't know. I knew that most women had an instinct for danger that their men chose to ignore. I knew that the tremor in her voice suggested she'd been down this road before. I knew that Kyle Stevens was about to lose more than money tonight, though he didn't realize it yet. The game had been running since 8 p.m. By my count, Kyle was down $47,000 and climbing. His watch, a Rolex Submariner that probably represented 3 months of his salary, sat in the center of the table next to a crumpled deed to what I assumed was their shared apartment. Desperation was a beautiful thing to witness when you weren't drowning in it yourself. "Your bet, Federico," Phil said, pushing chips forward with the confidence of a man who'd never truly lost anything that mattered. I glanced at my cards, a mediocre hand that most players would fold without hesitation. But poker was never really about the cards. It was about reading the room, understanding the players, and knowing when opportunity knocked. Kyle's phone buzzed again. This time he answered with barely concealed irritation. "Rachel, I told you." Her voice carried through the speaker, and though I couldn't make out every word, the melody was unmistakable. Worry wrapped in love, patience stretched thin, the sound of a woman who'd been making excuses for a man who didn't deserve them. That's when the idea crystallized in my mind, like frost on a window. I'd been in exile for 17 years, banished by my father after a misunderstanding involving a senator's daughter in a car accident that had been ruled an unfortunate tragedy. 17 years of building my own empire in Chicago, learning patience, cultivating connections, waiting for the inevitable call home. That call had come 2 months ago when my older brother Barini received his diagnosis. Glioblastoma multiforme. 6 months, maybe 8 if God was feeling generous. The prodigal son returns to inherit his crown. But every king needs a queen. Kyle ended the call and tried to refocus on his cards, but I could see the guilt eating at him like acid. Good. Guilt made men stupid, and stupid men made interesting wagers. "Gentlemen," I said, placing my cards face down on the table, "I'd like to propose something different. Kyle, you're hemorrhaging money tonight, and we both know you don't have $47,000 in cash." Kyle's Adam's apple bobbed. "I'm good for it. I'm sure you are. But I'm interested in making this educational." I leaned back in my chair, studying him like a scientist examining a particularly fascinating specimen. "One hand. Winner takes all. You're dead against? Let's call it a favor." Scott and Phil exchanged glances. The room seemed to tighten around us. as if the walls themselves were leaning in to listen. "What kind of favor?" Kyle asked, though something in his eyes suggested he already suspected he wouldn't like the answer. 28 days, I said simply. 28 days with your fiancée. If I win, she spend a month as my guest. No harm will come to her. She'll be treated with respect, fed well, housed comfortably. Think of it as a very exclusive vacation. The silence that followed was the kind that precedes either violence or capitulation. Kyle's face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, anger, indignation, and finally, predictably, calculation. That's insane. You can't be serious. I'm always serious about business, I replied. And this is business, Kyle. Your debt, wiped clean. Double or nothing. If you win, I'll pay you another $47,000 in cash. On the other hand, if I win, I shrugged. Well, you've heard my terms. She'd never agree to it. That would be between you and her, wouldn't it? I'm making the wager with you, not with Rachael. Kyle's hands shook as he reached for his whiskey. The amber liquid sloshed against the crystal tumbler like liquid courage trying to find its way home. This is medieval. You can't enforce something like that. Can't I? I let the question hover between us. Neither threat nor promise, but something far more dangerous. Possibility. The beautiful thing about men like Kyle Stevens was their fundamental inability to resist a chance at redemption, even when that chance came wrapped in thorns. I could see the wheels turning in his head. The mathematical probability of winning, the desperation of a man drowning in debt, the arrogance that whispered he was smarter than the situation he'd stumbled into. One hand, he asked finally. One hand. And if I win, you pay me $94,000 total in cash. Tonight, I replied. Kyle looked around the table at Phil and Scott, both of whom were watching this exchange with the fascination of men witnessing a car accident in slow motion. Neither would intervene. In their world, debts were sacred and desperate men were entertainment. She's not property, Kyle said, but his voice carried no conviction. Of course not, I agreed smoothly. She's a woman with her own agency. But the debt is yours, and the wager is yours to make. What she chooses to do with the consequences, well, that's what makes it interesting. Kyle's phone buzzed again. This time he didn't answer. This time, he simply stared at it, as if it contained all the answers to questions he was afraid to ask. Deal the cards, he said finally, and as Phil shuffled the deck with hands that had never known real consequence, I smiled. Not because I was confident in my cards, I hadn't even seen them yet, but because I was confident in my ability to make this game end exactly how I needed it to. The house always wins, and tonight I was the house.
Chapter 2. An Offer He Can't Refuse.
I should have walked away, should have folded my cards, taken the loss, and figured out another way to dig myself out of this hole. But the number $94,000 kept flashing in my brain like a neon sign in Times Square. $94,000 would clear my debts, get the loan sharks off my back, maybe even leave enough for a fresh start. The thing is, Federico couldn't possibly be serious about this bizarre wager. I mean, come on, 28 days with Rachael? That's kidnapping, pure and simple, completely unenforceable. No court in America would uphold something like that, and I seriously doubted this guy, smooth as he was, had the kind of juice to actually make good on such a ridiculous threat. It was a bluff, a psychological game to throw me off my stride, and I wasn't falling for it. You know what? I said, straightening my shoulders and trying to project the confidence I'd felt back when my luck was running hot and the world still made sense. Fine, let's play your little game. Phil dealt the cards with the mechanical precision of a man who'd done this 1,000 times before. I picked up my hand slowly, savoring the moment. If this was going to be my redemption, I wanted to remember every second. 2 kings stared back at me. Not just any kings. The King of Hearts and the King of Spades. In poker, we called that cowboys, and it was the second best possible starting hand. The odds of Federico having pocket aces were astronomical. This was it. This was my ticket out. I kept my face neutral, though inside I was practically dancing. Federico wanted to play games? Fine. Let's see how he liked losing. Interesting hand. Federico asked, his dark eyes studying my face with an intensity that made my skin crawl. There was something predatory about the way he watched people, like a cat deciding which mouths to play with first. "We'll see," I replied, trying to match his casual tone. "Cards don't lie." "No," he agreed softly, "they don't." The door to the poker room opened with a soft whisper, and I heard familiar footsteps on the polished concrete floor. My blood turned to ice water. "Kyle, there you are. I've been calling you for hours." "Rachel." I spun around in my chair, and there she was, my beautiful, trusting fiancée, still in her work clothes from the marketing firm where she spent her days helping create campaigns for small-sized companies. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and concern etched gentle lines around her green eyes. She looked so innocent, so unaware of the darkness that had crept into my life, the desperate choices I'd been making, the hole I'd been digging for both of us. "Honey, what are you doing here? Your friend David told me you might be here. I was worried sick." She moved toward me, but her eyes kept darting to the other men at the table. "I thought we agreed you were going to take a break from—" Her voice trailed off as she took in the scene. The stacks of chips, the cash on the table, the expensive watches and jewelry that represented the last desperate gasps of men drowning in their own greed. "Kyle," she whispered, and there was something in her voice that cut deeper than any accusation could have. Disappointment. "You promised." "It's not what it looks like," I said quickly, the lie tasting bitter on my tongue. "This is different. This is the last time. I swear. You always say that. This time I mean it. After tonight, we'll be set. No more worrying about money. No more late notices, no more. No more trust," she finished quietly. The room fell silent, except for the soft jazz playing from hidden speakers and the distant hum of the city above us. I could feel the other players watching this domestic drama unfold like spectators at a tennis match. That's when Federico stood up.
She was beautiful, like her voice had suggested, not drop-dead gorgeous by conventional standards. She wasn't the kind of woman who would make every head turn. No striking features or commanding presence that demanded attention. But beauty, they say, is in the eyes of the beholder, and my eyes and attention were on her, soaking up every detail of her presence. Rachel moved through the smoky room like sunlight cutting through storm clouds, pure, clean, completely out of place in this den of vice and desperation. Her concern for Kyle was written across her face in careful script, and I found myself studying her the way a jeweler examines a particularly fine diamond. This was no vapid girlfriend. There was intelligence in those green eyes, strength in the way she carried herself despite being clearly uncomfortable in our world. She loved Kyle. That much was obvious from the way she looked at him. But there were hairline fractures in that love, tiny fissures that a patient man could widen. "Gentlemen, I said, rising from my chair with deliberate grace. Allow me to introduce myself. Federico Clemenza. I extended my hand to Rachael, noting the slight tremor in her fingers as she shook it. You must be the Rachael I've heard so much about. You know who I am? Your fiancé speaks of you often. I lied smoothly, though his words hardly do you justice. A flush crept up her neck, and Kyle shot me a look that could have melted steel. Good. Jealousy made men even more stupid than desperation. Kyle, we need to go, Rachael said, turning back to her fiancé. Now, just one more hand, babe. I promise. One hand, and then we're done. You said that 3 hands ago, and 5 hands before that. This is different. Kyle's voice carried the desperate edge of a man, trying to convince himself as much as anyone else. We're playing for serious money now. Life-changing money. How much? She asked quietly. Kyle hesitated, and in that hesitation, I saw my opening. Nearly $100,000, I said conversationally, enjoying the way her eyes widened. Kyle's been having quite the evening. Haven't you, Kyle? The look Rachael gave Kyle could have frozen hell. 100,000? Kyle, we don't have that kind of money. We don't have any money. That's why I have to win it back, Kyle said, his voice cracking with strain. Don't you see? This is our chance. Our one shot at getting ahead of all this. She stared at him for a long moment, and I watched as something shifted in her expression. Not love dying exactly, but love evolving, becoming something more complicated. What happens if you lose? She asked. Kyle's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The beautiful idiot hadn't even considered telling her about the wager. He'd assumed he'd win, collect his money, and never have to explain the depths of his stupidity. He won't lose, I interjected, my voice carrying just the right note of reassurance mixed with challenge. Kyle's been telling me all evening how good he is at this game. The trap was set. All that remained was to see if Kyle was foolish enough to walk into it.
I won't lose, I echoed, though the words felt like ash in my mouth. Honey, you have to trust me on this. When have I ever let you down? The look she gave me could have powered half of Manhattan, but she didn't answer the question. Maybe because we both knew the answer, and it wasn't one I wanted to hear. One hand, she said finally, then we go home. And Kyle, if you lose... She let the threat stand unfinished, which somehow made it more terrifying than any specific consequence could have been. Phil dealt the cards again. 3 community cards face up in the center of the table. The flop showed a king of clubs, a 7 of diamonds, and a 2 of hearts. 3 of a kind. Kings. I had 3 kings. My heart hammered against my ribs, so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. This was it. This was the miracle I'd been praying for every night for the past 6 months. Federico would need 4 of a kind or a straight flush to beat me, and the odds of that were practically non-existent. I glanced at Federico, expecting to see worry or calculation in his expression. Instead, he looked amused, like he was watching a magic trick and already knew the ending. Your bet, Phil said. All in, I declared, pushing my remaining chips toward the center of the table. Federico smiled. Actually smiled. Interesting choice. He reached into his jacket and withdrew a thick envelope, setting it on the table with theatrical precision. Since we're playing for such high stakes, perhaps we should clarify the terms. Kyle, you're wagering your debt against 28 days with Rachael. Are we all clear on that? 28 days with me for what? Rachel's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. The silence stretched until it felt like a noose tightening around my neck. Kyle. Her voice was deadly quiet now. 28 days with me for what?
The moment Kyle's face went white, I knew. Whatever sick game these men were playing, I was the prize. It's not enforceable, Kyle stammered. It's just talk. A joke. Right, Federico? Federico leaned back in his chair, those dark eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin feel too tight. I never joke about business, Kyle. You know that. What exactly are you wagering? I asked, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. Inside, I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, waiting for someone to push me. If Kyle loses, Federico said, his voice soft as velvet, you would spend 28 days as my guest. Completely safe, completely comfortable. Think of it as an extended vacation. The words hit me like ice water. You're betting me, like I'm a poker chip. He can't actually make you do anything, Kyle said quickly. It's completely unenforceable. What's he going to do? Kidnap you? This isn't the Middle Ages. But Federico wasn't looking at Kyle anymore. He was looking at me, and there was something in his gaze that made me feel exposed, like he could see right through to my soul. 28 days, I repeated slowly. And if Kyle wins? He walks away with $94,000 cash and never sees me again. I looked at Kyle, really looked at him, at the man I'd been planning to marry, who had just wagered me in a poker game like I was a piece of property. The man who was so confident in his ability to win that he hadn't even considered what losing might mean. And you're sure you're going to win? I asked him. Positive. Baby, I have the best hand possible. This guy is bluffing. I studied Federico's face, searching for tells, for signs of weakness or deception. But there was nothing there except patient confidence and something else, something that made my pulse quicken in a way I didn't want to examine too closely. Show your cards, I said.
Chapter 3. The Lion's Lair.
The ride to Federico's estate passed in a blur of shock and disbelief. 2 hours ago, I'd been a marketing assistant with a gambling-addicted fiancé and a modest life. Now I was sitting in the passenger seat of a black Bentley, watching the city lights blur past while trying to process what had just happened. Kyle had lost. Not just lost, been destroyed. Federico's straight flush had crushed Kyle's 3 kings so completely it felt like watching a car accident in slow motion. And then, when Kyle had tried to back out of the wager, when he'd started stammering about lawyers and police and how nobody could make Rachel do anything, 2 men in black suits with guns drawn had appeared from nowhere. 28 days, Federico had said calmly. Or your blood on the pavement. Kyle's choice had been swift, if not honorable. Now here I was, a passenger in my own life, trying to reconcile the Federico sitting beside me with the man who had just calmly threatened murder. He drove with one hand on the wheel, his profile illuminated by the dashboard lights. Handsome in a dangerous way, like a blade wrapped in silk. You're very quiet, he observed, his voice carrying the faintest trace of an Italian accent. I'm processing, I replied, surprised by how steady I sounded. It's not every day someone wins me in a poker game. One is a strong word. I prefer to think of it as an opportunity for us to get to know each other. Under duress? Are you under duress, Rachel? He glanced at me, those dark eyes unreadable. Because if you are, I can turn this car around right now. Take you home. Pretend this never happened. You made me quit my job. I didn't make you do anything, he countered. Calling your boss to quit your job was your decision. I merely suggested it. Again, I can turn this car around right now and take you home. I stared out the window, watching the city give way to the manicured lawns and iron gates of old money. And Kyle's debt would remain Kyle's problem. You'd really let me go? Just like that, Federico was quiet for so long I thought he wasn't going to answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was softer than before. I've never been interested in unwilling participants, Rachel. In any context. Something in his tone made me look at him again. There was a sincerity there that surprised me, cutting through the predatory sophistication like sunlight through storm clouds. Then why this? Why the elaborate setup? You could have just asked Kyle for the money. Could I? Federico pulled through ornate iron gates that opened at our approach. Tell me, Rachel, how long has Kyle been gambling away your future? The question hit like a slap. That's not. 6 months? A year? Longer? Federico's voice remained gentle, but there was steel underneath. How many times has he promised to quit? How many times have you made excuses for him to friends, to family, to yourself? I wanted to defend Kyle, to list all his good qualities and explain how the gambling was just a phase, a temporary weakness. But the words wouldn't come. Maybe because Federico was right. Maybe because I was tired of making excuses. Deep down, I also feared Kyle wouldn't go to the police. He has a fragile ego, and I don't think he'd be willing to risk the vitriol he would face should the full story make its way to the public. The car pulled to a stop in front of a mansion that looked like something out of a movie, all classical columns and sweeping staircases, lit by soft golden lights that made the limestone facade glow like warm honey. Welcome home, Federico said quietly. Home. The word sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with fear. The first thing I noticed when we entered wasn't the marble floors or the gold-framed oil paintings. It was the silence. Not fearful, not awkward, just waiting. Are you hungry? Federico asked, his voice echoing slightly in the vast foyer. I realized I was. It had been hours since I'd eaten, and the stress of the evening had left me hollow. A little. Ralph will prepare something. Ralph. A man appeared from somewhere in the depths of the house, middle-aged, impeccably dressed, moving with the quiet efficiency of someone accustomed to anticipating needs before they were voiced. Sir, something light for our guest, please. She's had a difficult evening. Of course. Wine with dinner, miss? I almost said no. I needed to keep my wits about me, needed to stay sharp. But something about the casual normalcy of the question, the way both men waited for my answer as if my preferences mattered, made me nod. Red, if you have it. We have an excellent Prologue, Federico said. I think you'll like it. As Ralph disappeared back into the house's depths, Federico turned to me. You can leave, you know. You won't get far. But you can leave. I didn't answer. Not because I was scared, but because I wanted to see what he would do if I stayed. Let me show you to your room, he said when I remained silent. You can rest, eat, decide what you want to do. No pressure. No expectations. We climbed a sweeping staircase that belonged in a museum, past portraits of stern-faced men and elegant women who all shared Federico's dark eyes and aristocratic features. The Clemenza dynasty, I realized, generations of power and influence stretching back into history. This is you, Federico said, opening a door to reveal a bedroom that was larger than my entire apartment. Rich burgundy walls, antique furniture that probably worth more than I made in a year, and French doors leading to a balcony overlooking gardens that seemed to stretch into infinity. It's beautiful, I said honestly. I'm glad you approve. Federico stepped back, giving me space. Ralph will bring your dinner up shortly. If you need anything at all, just pick up the phone. Extension 3 will reach me directly. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. Rachel. Yes. I know this evening has been unprecedented. I know you have every reason to be frightened, angry, confused. But I want you to know something. His dark eyes met mine across the elegant room. You are not a prisoner here. You are a guest. The difference matters to me, even if it doesn't matter to you yet." Then he was gone, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the lingering scent of his cologne, something expensive and masculine that made me think of midnight and secrets. I walked to the French doors and stepped onto the balcony. The night air was cool against my skin, carrying the scent of roses from the gardens below. In the distance, the city sparkled like scattered diamonds, a world away from this quiet sanctuary of wealth and power. What was I doing here? What was I becoming? 5 hours ago, I'd been ordinary Rachael Hathaway, engaged to a man with a gambling problem, working a job I tolerated to pay bills for a life I'd never quite chosen. Now I was standing on a marble balcony, wearing clothes that probably had designer labels, about to eat food prepared by a man who called Federico sir. And the strangest part? I wasn't terrified. I should have been. Any sane woman would have been. But instead, I felt awake. Like I'd been sleepwalking through my life, and suddenly, violently, someone had shaken me conscious. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Ralph entered with a silver tray, setting it on a small table near the window with practiced grace. "The Prologue," he said, pouring wine the color of liquid rubies into a crystal glass. "And some light fare, pear and prosciutto, fresh bread, a selection of cheeses. Nothing too heavy for the late hour." "Thank you," I said, meaning it. Ralph nodded and moved toward the door, then paused. "Miss, if I may, Mr. Clemenza is a good man. Whatever brought you here tonight, you're safe in this house." "How do you know what brought me here?" Ralph's smile was gentle but knowing. "I've worked for the Clemenza family for 30 years. I've learned to read between the lines."
Chapter 4. God Help Me.
The morning arrived with the kind of silence that precedes storms. I'd watched her through the night, not physically, but in my mind. The way she'd held herself in that chair, spine straight despite everything. Most people crumble by morning. Rachael Hathaway was not most people. I found her in the conservatory, standing before the wall of windows that overlooked the gardens. The morning light caught the auburn in her hair, turning it to burnished copper. She wore the clothes Ralph had provided, simple black slacks and a cream silk blouse that somehow made her look more refined than the designer dress she'd worn to Kyle's pathetic poker game. "Sleep well?" I asked, stepping into the room with deliberate footsteps. Let her hear me coming. No surprises. She turned, and I caught something in her eyes. Not fear, but calculation. She was studying me the way I'd been studying her. "Interesting. As well as someone can when they're being held against their will," she replied, her voice steady. "Against your will." I moved closer, noting how she didn't retreat. "That's an interesting way to put it. You're here because your fiancé wagered you like a poker chip. I'm simply collecting what was won." Her jaw tightened. "I didn't agree to anything." "No, you didn't." I stopped just close enough to see the gold flecks in her green eyes. Which brings us to why we need to establish some ground rules.
He wanted to set rules. Of course he did. Men like Federico, and I was beginning to understand exactly what kind of man he was. Lived by codes and systems. Everything in its place, everything controlled. We sat in his study, a room that felt like it belonged in a Renaissance palace rather than a modern estate. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and the subtle scent of expensive cologne and old paper. He poured himself whiskey, offered me wine. I declined both. "Rule number 1, Federico said, settling into the chair across from me with predatory grace. "No one will force you to do anything you don't want to do." I blinked. "Excuse me?" "You heard correctly." His dark eyes held mine. "No forcing you to share my bed. No violence. No coercion of that nature." "How generous," I said, unable to keep the sarcasm from my voice. And what exactly do you want from me then? A smile played at the corners of his mouth, the kind of smile that made my pulse quicken in ways I didn't want to examine. I want you to stay because you want to stay. That's impossible. I don't want to be here. Don't you? He leaned forward slightly. You could have run yesterday. The front door isn't locked. Neither are the garden gates. My men have orders not to stop you. I felt my breath catch. You're lying. Am I? He stood, walked to his desk, and picked up a set of keys. These are to the Mercedes in the garage. Take them. Drive away. Right now. The keys gleamed silver in his palm. I stared at them, my heart hammering. There's a catch. There's always a catch, Rachel. The way he said my name was different now, like he was tasting it. The catch is that if you leave, Kyle dies. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. And you'll know it was because you chose him over the alternative. The alternative? 28 days. That was the bargain. Give me that time, and I'll consider his debt paid in full. Federico's voice dropped lower. But more than that, give me the chance to show you what you could be. What I could be. I stood up, anger flaring. I'm not your project, Mr. Clemenza. He moved closer, and I caught his scent again, something dark and expensive that made my head spin. And you're right. You're not my project. You're my possibility. I wanted to ask what he meant, but I was afraid of the answer. Afraid of the way something deep inside me responded to the intensity in his voice. Rule number 2, he continued, circling me slowly, like a predator studying prey. You don't try to contact Kyle unless I'm present. He's my fiancé. He's the man who put you here. Federico stopped directly in front of me. He gets supervised visits. Nothing more. And rule number 3? You stop lying to yourself about what you want. The words hit me like ice water. What's that supposed to mean? It means I've been watching you, Rachel. The way you move, the way you think, the way you looked at Kyle during that poker game. His hand lifted, stopping just short of touching my face. I could feel the heat of his palm against my cheek. You want more than the life he was offering you. You want to matter. You want to be seen. I jerked back. You don't know anything about me. I know you graduated from Brooklyn College with a degree in communications 8 years ago. But you now work as a marketing assistant for a company that barely utilizes your intelligence. His voice was matter-of-fact, devastating in its accuracy. I know Kyle has been promising to marry you for 3 years, but keeps finding excuses. I know you've been supporting him financially while he chased his gambling addiction. Each word was a precision strike. You investigated me. I investigate everything that interests me. And you, Rachael Hathaway, interests me more than anything has in a very long time. I wanted to hate him for knowing so much, for seeing through all the careful lies I'd been telling myself. Instead, I felt something much more dangerous. I felt seen. These rules, I said, my voice barely steady. What happens if I break them? You won't. How can you be so sure? Federico's smile was slow, dangerous, absolutely certain. Because breaking them would mean admitting you want to leave. And we both know you don't. The truth of it hit me like a physical force. I did want to leave. I should want to leave. Any sane person would want to leave. But standing there in his study, feeling the weight of his attention like sunlight, I realized the terrible truth. I was curious. About him. About what he saw when he looked at me. About what I might become if I stopped being afraid of my own desires. 28 days, I said quietly. 28 days, he confirmed. And then you choose. The air between us felt charged, electric. I had the distinct feeling I was standing at the edge of a cliff, and the only question was whether I would jump or be pushed. Federico stepped back, giving me space to breathe. Ralph will show you to the library. I think you'll find it educational. As I walked toward the door, I felt his eyes on me. When I reached the threshold, I couldn't help myself. I looked back. Federico. Yes. What makes you think I'm worth all this trouble? His answer followed me out of the room, low and certain and terrifying in its conviction. Because you're going to be magnificent, Rachel. And I'm going to enjoy watching you discover just how magnificent you can be. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and I realized that somewhere in the space of 2 days, the game had changed completely. I was no longer just Kyle's collateral damage. I was Federico Clemenza's fascination. And God help me, I was starting to be fascinated right back.
Chapter 5. I Will Not Lose.
4 days. 4 goddamn days since Federico Clemenza took her. Since I watched that snake of a man lead my fiancée out of the casino like she was some trophy he'd won fair and square. Fair. As if anything about that night was fair. The estate looms ahead of me now, all limestone and iron gates, the kind of place that screams old money and older sins. My hands won't stop shaking as I approach the entrance. The security guard checks his list, nods, and waves me through. A sanctioned visit, like I'm visiting her in prison, except we both know who the real prisoner is here. I dig into my pocket, feeling the weight of the sobriety coin. 3 days clean. 3 days since I hit rock bottom, watching her disappear into that Blacktown car. The counselor at the meeting said admitting you have a problem is the first step. Well, here I am, ready to show her I'm taking all the steps. The butler, Ralph, I think his name is, leads me through corridors that seem designed to make you feel small. Every painting probably worth more than I'll make in a lifetime. Every piece of furniture positioned just so. This is Federico's world. A world I accidentally threw Rachel into. No, not accidentally. I need to own this. That's what the program teaches. Accountability. When Ralph opens the door to the sitting room, I see her immediately. She's by the window, wearing a dress I don't recognize. Deep emerald green, elegant in a way her clothes never were before. Her auburn hair catches the afternoon light, and for a moment, my heart skipped a beat from excitement. Kyle. Her voice is neutral, not warm, not cold, just there. I cross the room quickly, wanting to pull her into my arms, but she takes a small step back. The rejection stings, but I push through it. Rachel. Baby, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for everything.
He looks terrible. Hollow eyes, stubble that's gone past fashionable into neglect, and that nervous energy that always preceded his biggest promises. But there's something else too, a forced sobriety that makes his movements too deliberate, too careful. I hit rock bottom, he's saying, and I find myself studying the way his hands move as he talks, the way they used to move when he shuffled cards. The day Federico took you away, I realized what I'd done, what I'd become. He pulls out a coin, bronze or copper, holding it up like a priest with a communion wafer. 3 days, he says proudly. It's from the 12-step program. I'm getting help, Rachel. Real help this time. Congratulations, I hear myself say, and I mean it sort of. But in my mind, I'm wondering why it took this. Why it took me being wagered like a poker chip, taken to a stranger's mansion, before he acknowledged what I'd been begging him to see for years. I know what you're thinking, Kyle continues. Though he doesn't. He never really did. Why now? Why did it take this happening to you? But sometimes we need to lose everything to realize what matters. I move to the settee, needing distance between us. The fabric is buttersoft beneath my fingers. Everything here is deliberately chosen, Deliberately perfect. Even me. I'm starting to realize. Kyle, I've been thinking these past 3 days. 4 days, he corrects. It's been 4 days.
4 days, then.
I've been thinking about my life. About us. I turn 31 in a week. The words come out measured, careful. This isn't what I thought 31 would look like. He rushes forward then, drops to his knees in front of me. A parody of a proposal. After my recovery, we'll get married. We'll have the family you want, the life you deserve. Just don't give up on me now. Not when I'm finally getting better. The family I want. As if he ever listened when I talked about children, about stability, about a future that didn't revolve around the next game, the next bet, the next sure thing. You should continue therapy, I tell him, and I'm surprised by how steady my voice is. For your own sake, not mine. What does that mean? It means I need time to think about us. About whether there even is an us anymore. His face changes then, that familiar shift from pleading to suspicion. Has he forced himself on you? The question hangs between us, ugly and accusatory.
No.
No? His voice rises slightly. Just no? That's it? Something shifts in me then. A wall coming down, or maybe going up. Federico has been kind to me. He's charming and charismatic. He has more money than God, Kyle. He doesn't need to force women to do anything. They line up for his attention.
Did you?
The words crack out of him like a whip. Did you line up? Did you throw yourself at him like some? He stops himself, but the damage is done. The accusation sits between us, raw and insulting. But here's the strange thing. I don't care. For the first time in years, I truly don't care what Kyle Stevens thinks of me. I stand, smoothing down the green dress, a dress Federico chose, had delivered to my room with a note that simply said, "This color suits you. I think you should go." He's manipulating you, Kyle shouts, jumping to his feet. Can't you see that? He's in your head, making you think. He's given me clarity, I say, and I'm already walking toward the door. Something you never did. Rachel, wait. But I don't wait. I leave him standing there in that beautiful room, in this beautiful prison that feels less like a cage with each passing day.
The door closes with a soft click that might as well be a gunshot. I'm alone in this room that probably costs more to maintain than I make in a year, and I can still smell her perfume, something new, something expensive, something he probably picked out. 4 days. Only 4 days, and she's defending him, talking about his charm, his money, like she's already forgotten who put a ring on her finger 3 years ago. Like she's forgotten who loved her when she was just a marketing assistant living in a studio apartment, eating takeout from containers while we planned our future. But that's not fair, is it? That's what the counselor would say. I need to examine my role in this. Take accountability. Except how do you take accountability for losing the best thing in your life to the worst person imaginable? How do you accept that your fiancé is being seduced by a man who probably has people killed before breakfast? I sink into the chair she just vacated. It's still warm from her body, and I hate myself for noticing. I hate myself for a lot of things these days. The butler returns, Ralph, with his perfect posture and his judgment-free expression. "Mr. Stevens, I'll need to escort you out now." "Yeah," I mutter, standing. "Yeah, okay." As we walk through those endless corridors, past all that wealth and power, I make a decision. I'm not giving up. Not on her, not on us. Federico Clemenza might have won that hand, might have her for 24 more days, but I know Rachel. I know the woman she really is, underneath whatever spell he's weaving. She's mine. She's been mine since the night we met at that dive bar 5 years ago, when she laughed at my terrible jokes and let me buy her cheap whiskey. Before I knew about the trust fund I'd blow through. Before the debts. Before everything went to shit. She's mine, and I'll be damned if I let some mafia prince steal her away with expensive dresses and empty charm. The sunlight hits me as I exit the estate, harsh and accusing. 24 more days. I can stay away from anything gambling related for 24 days. I can get her back. I can fix this. I have to. Because the alternative, the thought of her choosing him, of her wanting that life, that man, is something I can't accept. Won't accept. My car feels small and shabby after being in that mansion. The engine coughs before starting, and I grip the steering wheel until my knuckles go white. In my pocket, the sobriety coin digs into my leg, a reminder of promises made and promises I need to keep. She said she needed time to think. She said she wasn't sure about us anymore. But she didn't say it was over. She didn't say she loved him. Not yet. And as long as there's a not yet, there's still hope. There has to be. I pull away from the estate, but I know I'll be back. Not tomorrow. Federico's rules, the bastard. But soon. And next time, I'll make her remember who she really is. Who we really are. She's confused, that's all. Dazzled by the money, the power, the dangerous charm of a man who knows exactly what buttons to push. But when these 28 days are over, when she comes home to our apartment, to our life, she'll see things clearly again. She has to. Because if she doesn't, if she actually chooses him, no, I won't think about that. Can't think about that. 24 more days. 24 more days, and this nightmare ends. 24 more days, and I get her back. I just need to stay strong. Stay clean. Stay focused. The coin in my pocket feels heavier now, weighted with more than just 3 days of sobriety. It's weighted with promise, with determination, with the absolute certainty that I will not lose her to Federico Clemenza. Not without a fight.
Chapter 6. Reading Between the Lines.
She returns from her visit with Kyle, looking different. Not broken. I would have been disappointed if she were broken so easily. But changed. Clarified, perhaps. I watch her through the security monitors as she walks through the gardens. Her movements more purposeful than they've been since her arrival. She stops at the fountain where the water catches afternoon light like scattered diamonds, and she does something unexpected. She smiles. Not the polite, careful smile she's been wearing like armor. A real smile. Small, private, like she's sharing a secret with herself. Interesting. Ralph brings me her psychological profile, the one I had my people compile just after winning her at the poker game. It details aspects of her personality, some of which, through observation, I'm already aware of. Strong nurturing instinct, empathy, compassion, loyalty, devotion, anxiety, people-pleasing, difficulty with setting boundaries. No criminal history, no red flags except for one, her choice in men. But profiles only tell you what someone has done, not what they're capable of doing. I've been studying people my entire life. In my world, misreading someone's nature is often the difference between power and a grave. Rachael Hathaway is complex, layered. There's something sleeping beneath her surface propriety, something that responds to strength rather than cowering from it. She handled Kyle's tantrum with the calm precision of a surgeon. No tears, no pleading, no dramatic collapse. Just steady, implacable truth. Most interesting of all, she didn't ask me to end the arrangement early. She could have. After what Kyle said to her, I would have been within my rights to release her. The contract was with him after all. She chose to stay. The question is, why?
The morning arrived with rain against the windows, each droplet racing down the glass like tears I refused to shed. I'd been watching Federico from the terrace doorway for 20 minutes now. He stood in his study, phone pressed to his ear, speaking rapid Italian that sounded like music wrapped in thorns. Even from here, I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his free hand clenched and unclenched at his side. He ended the call and turned, catching me watching. Neither of us looked away. Curious? His voice carried across the space between us. About what makes a man like you tick? I replied. He approached slowly, deliberately, like a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. And what have you discovered? That you're methodical, calculating. You learn everything about a person before you make your move. I held my ground as he stopped just close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark that made my pulse quicken. You've been studying me.
Guilty.
No shame in his admission. Tell me about your dreams, Rachel. The question caught me off guard. My dreams. The ones you had before Kyle started gambling them away. The ones you whisper to yourself when you think no one's listening. My breath caught. How did he know I did that? I wanted to run my own agency, create campaigns that actually meant something. Not just sell products, but tell stories that mattered. And now I'm standing in a mafia compound discussing my abandoned ambitions with the man who won me in a poker game. His laugh was soft, dangerous. You weren't won. You were revealed. There's a difference. Semantics. Truth. He moved to the bookshelf, running his fingers along the spines. What else? What makes Rachael Hathaway's heart race? Besides danger, obviously. Heat crept up my neck. I don't find danger thrilling. You do. You've been watching me as intently as I've been watching you. Your breathing changes when I enter a room. Your pupils dilate when I get close. He pulled a book from the shelf. But I meant something else, he continued. One of the maids mentioned you were singing yesterday, in the shower. Mortification washed over me. That's private. Taylor Swift, wasn't it? I wanted to sink into the floor. So, what if it was? She says. He seemed amused. A woman who can quote Machiavelli over dinner and knows every word too all too well. Fascinating contradiction. Everyone has layers, I said. Not everyone wears them so beautifully. The compliment hung between us, unexpected and sincere. I didn't know how to respond, so I changed the subject. Your turn. What makes Federico Clemenza tick? Besides power and control. Bold assumption. Accurate one. He set the book down. I read. Philosophy, mostly. Aurelius, Seneca, occasionally Nietzsche when I'm feeling particularly nihilistic. A philosophical mobster. Now who's the contradiction? All the best monsters are well-read, Rachel. Day 6 brought an unexpected invitation. Federico appeared at my door carrying a chess set, marble pieces that looked ancient and priceless. Do you play? He asked. Kyle taught me. Something flickered in his eyes. Then I'll teach you properly. We set up in the library, rain still pattering against the windows. He chose black, leaving me white. Ladies first. I moved my pawn. He countered immediately. Tell me, he said, studying the board, what did you think when Kyle made that bet? The question I'd been dreading. I didn't know until after. But when you found out? He pressed further. I wanted to kill him. I replied, moving my knight. Yet you came anyway. He said you'd hurt him, if I didn't. Maybe worse. Federico's bishop glided across the board. He wasn't wrong. But that's not why you stayed. Isn't it?
No.
His eyes met mine. You stayed because you're curious. Because some part of you wanted to see what would happen. Because monotony was killing you slowly, and even this, twisted as it is, feels more alive than the life you were living. I hated how accurately he read me. That's presumptuous. That's observation. Your move. I studied the board, trying to focus on strategy instead of the way his fingers drummed against the table. You're lonely. His hand stilled. Excuse me? All this power, all this control, and you're desperately lonely. That's why you didn't just take what Kyle wagered. You want something you can't buy, or steal, or win. I moved my queen. You want someone to choose you. Silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, check. I'd been so focused on psychoanalyzing him, I'd missed his trap. 3 moves later, I was in checkmate. Again, I demanded. We played 3 more games. I lost them all, but each time I lasted longer, learned more. Between moves, we talked about books, about music, about the philosophy of choice and power. He was brilliant in a way that both thrilled and terrified me. You could have been anything, I said during our 4th game. Why this? Family is destiny in my world, Rachel. We don't choose, we inherit. He captured my rook. But you had choices. Why Kyle? The question stung. He was charming once. Attentive. He made me feel special. And then he showed me who he really was. By that time, I'd already invested so much. I trailed off, hating how weak it sounded. Sunk cost fallacy. The poker player's eternal trap. Speaking from experience, I never lose at poker, Rachel. I don't leave anything to chance. The admission hung between us. You cheated. I won. Day 7 arrived with sunshine, and with it, a different kind of game. Federico found me in the garden, book in hand. What are you reading? I showed him the cover. Your Aurelius. Meditations. Impressions?
He was sad.
Brilliant, but sad. Most brilliant people are. He sat beside me on the stone bench, close enough that our shoulders almost touched. There's something I want to show you. He led me to a room I hadn't seen before, an art studio flooded with natural light. Canvases lined the walls, some finished, others abandoned mid-stroke. They were good, really good. Dark, emotional pieces that revealed more about him than any conversation could. You painted these? Another contradiction for your collection. I moved between the canvases, studying each one. There was pain in every brushstroke, longing in every shadow. They're beautiful. Beautiful things can be dangerous. Like you? He moved behind me, not touching but close enough that I felt his heat. Am I beautiful, Rachel? My heart hammered against my ribs. You know you are. I know what mirrors tell me. I'm asking what you see. I turned to face him, the space between us charged with electricity. I see someone who could destroy me if I let him. And someone who might be worth the risk. His hand rose to my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. You terrify me. Good. The word came out breathier than intended. We stood frozen, balanced on a knife's edge. Then his phone rang, shattering the moment. He answered in Italian, his expression darkening with each word. When he hung up, the warmth in his eyes had been replaced by something colder.
Business, he said.
I'll be gone until tomorrow. Federico, I think Ralph will see to anything you need, he said, cutting me off. He was already moving toward the door, then stopped. Rachel. Yes. When I get back, things will change. Be sure you're ready for that. He left before I could ask what he meant. But standing in that sun-drenched studio, surrounded by his pain and passion made permanent, I thought I already knew. The game was ending. The real test was about to begin.
Chapter 7, Dinner with Wolves.
Federico returned the following day, with an invitation that felt more like a summons. There's a dinner tomorrow night. A private fundraiser for a mayoral candidate. You'll accompany me. I set down my coffee carefully. As what exactly? As mine. The possessiveness in his voice should have repelled me. Instead, it sent heat spiraling through my core. I don't have anything appropriate to wear. That's been handled. Of course it had. And if I refuse? He studied me with those dark eyes that seemed to see through every defense I'd built. You won't. That confident? That certain. He moved closer, each step deliberate. You're curious about my world, about what it would mean to stand beside me instead of behind Kyle. Kyle never took me to his important things. Kyle was a fool. His hand found my chin, tilting my face up to meet his gaze. Tomorrow night, you'll walk into a room full of wolves. They'll watch you, test you, measure your worth against their expectations. The question is, will you show them the woman who cowers or the queen learning she has claws? The challenge in his words ignited something in me. What makes you think I can pull off a queen? Because I've been watching you for 8 days, and the only person who doesn't see your potential is you. His thumb brushed my lower lip, the touch sending shockwaves through my system. Wear the red dress.
She emerged from her room the next evening, and I forgot how to breathe. The red dress hugged every curve, revealed just enough to tantalize without being vulgar. But it wasn't the dress that stopped me. It was her. The way she carried herself, shoulders back, chin raised. The transformation had begun days ago, but tonight she owned it. "Will I do?" she asked, a hint of nervousness beneath the bravado. "You'll destroy them." In the car, I watched her fidget with her clutch. Nervous? Should I be? Roberto Vieri will be there. He's old school, believes women should be seen and not heard. His wife, Amanda, enforces that doctrine among the other wives. Then there's Christian Baggio. Young, ambitious, thinks he's God's gift. He'll test you. Test me how? However he thinks will rattle you. These men respect two things: power and the ability to wield it without flinching. I caught her hand, stilling its nervous movement. "Remember, you're not there as Kyle's girlfriend who lost a bet. You're there as the woman I chose. But I'm not. Tonight you are. Tomorrow we'll see." The fundraiser was held at the Delborough Hotel's private ballroom. Old money and new blood mingling over champagne and carefully worded threats. I kept my hand on Rachel's lower back as we entered, a clear signal to everyone watching. And they were all watching. Federico, Roberto Vieri approached first, as expected. His eyes swept over Rachel dismissively. "I heard you were back in town." "Roberto." I didn't introduce Rachel. Rather, I let him ask. He didn't. Instead, he turned away, a calculated insult. Rachel surprised me by speaking up. "Mr. Vieri, isn't it? Your wife's charity auction last month raised quite a sum. The Children's Hospital must have been thrilled." Roberto turned back, reassessing. Amanda had organized no such auction. But Rachel's tone was so confident, so assured, that he hesitated. "You follow our charitable work? I follow successful strategies. Your wife understands that philanthropy is just another form of power. The soft hand that guides while the hard hand strikes." She smiled, sweet as poison. "I'm Rachel." Roberto actually looked impressed. "Clemenza, where have you been hiding this one?" "I don't hide treasures, Roberto. I protect them." As we moved through the room, Rachel continued to surprise me. She remembered names I'd mentioned only once, connected dots between business relationships, deflected Christian Baggio's crude advances with a laugh that left him somehow feeling flattered rather than rejected. But the real test came when Amanda Vieri cornered her while I was pulled into a conversation with a mayoral candidate.
"So, you're Federico's latest acquisition." Amanda Vieri looked like a perfectly preserved doll, beautiful, cold, and somehow lifeless despite the animation in her voice. I'm nobody's acquisition. Oh, honey. Her laugh tinkled like breaking glass. We're all acquisitions. The smart ones just negotiate better terms. 2 other wives had joined her, forming a semicircle that felt more like a trap. I recognized the dynamics immediately, the same power plays from high school, just with better jewelry. Tell me, Amanda continued, how does it feel knowing you were literally won in a card game? Like a prize at a carnival? The other women tittered. I felt Federico watching from across the room, but didn't look to him for rescue. It feels, I said slowly, like Federico saw something worth winning. While your husband barely sees you at all anymore, does he? That must be why you're trying so hard to diminish other women. Misery loves company, after all. Her face flushed. You little... I'm sorry, was that too direct? I thought honesty was valued in these circles. I sip my champagne. Or is it only appreciated when it's not about you? One of the other wives, Lucy, I think, actually snorted with suppressed laughter. Amanda's carefully composed mask cracked just enough to show the fury beneath. You don't know who you're dealing with. Neither do you. I stepped closer, lowering my voice. I'm not some trophy wife in training, Amanda. I'm here because Federico wanted me here. And unlike you, I don't need to tear down other women to feel powerful. That's the difference between us. You married into this world. I'm choosing it. I walked away before she could respond, my heart hammering but my step steady. Federico intercepted me near the bar. That was... He paused, searching for words. Too much? Perfect. That was perfect. His hand found the small of my back again, but this time it felt different. Protective.
Proud.
You just put Amanda Vieri in her place. No one's done that in 5 years. She had it coming. She did. He guided me toward the dance floor as the band began playing something slow and sultry. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. His hand found mine, the other settling at my waist, and suddenly we were moving. I'd danced with Kyle before, but this was different. Federico led with absolute confidence, every movement deliberate and controlled. I felt small in his arms, but not weak. Protected, not possessed. The days are passing quickly, he murmured against my ear.
Counting down?
Counting up. Each day you become more yourself, less his shadow. Maybe I was never his anything. No, he agreed, spinning me out and then back against his chest. You were always meant for more. The song ended, but he didn't let go immediately. We stood there, suspended in time, while the room buzzed around us. I could feel eyes on us, whispers starting. They're all watching, I said. Let them. Do you trust me? The question caught me off guard. I don't know. Fair, but do you want to? That was harder to answer. Because yes, despite everything, the bet, the captivity, the sheer insanity of it all, part of me wanted to trust him, wanted to believe that this was more than just a game to him. Yes, I admitted. His hand rose to cut my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. For a moment, I thought he would kiss me right there, in front of everyone. Instead, he pressed his lips to my forehead, the gesture somehow more intimate than a kiss would have been. Soon, he promised. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversations and calculations. I watched Federico work the room, saw how men deferred to him, how women wanted him, how everyone gave him just a little more space than necessary, respect mixed with fear. But I also saw the moments in between. The way he checked on me with glances. How he steered me away from conversations that got too intense. The pride in his eyes when I held my own against a senator who tried to patronize me. By the time we left, I was exhausted but exhilarated. In the car, I kicked off my heels and curled my legs under me. That was intense, educational. I looked at him. That's your world. Those are your people. That's one part of my world. The polished part. The part that pretends civilization matters more than survival. And the other part? You're not ready for the other part. Maybe I'm ready for more than you think. He studied me in the dim light of the car. Maybe you are. Days 10 through 12 blurred together. Something had shifted after the dinner. Federico included me in more conversations, asked my opinion on business matters, taught me to read the subtle dynamics of his world. I learned that power wasn't just about force, it was about knowing when to push and when to pull, when to speak, and when to let silence do the work. On day 12, as I stood on the terrace watching the sunset, I realized something that should have terrified me. I wasn't counting down to freedom anymore. I was counting down to a choice I wasn't sure I was ready to make.
Chapter 8. Shadows in the Confessional.
I couldn't sleep. Again. The silk sheets were luxurious beyond anything I'd ever experienced, but they felt like chains around my restless body. For the past 2 nights, I'd lain awake staring at the ornate ceiling, my mind churning with thoughts I wasn't ready to name. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed midnight, its deep resonance echoing through the mansion's corridors. I slipped from the bed, my bare feet touching the cold marble floor. The house was different at night, more honest somehow. The shadows seemed to whisper secrets, and the moonlight streaming through the tall windows cast everything in silver and black. I pulled on a silk robe Federico had recently gotten for me, emerald green, the color he said matched my eyes, and made my way through the maze of hallways. My destination was clear, though I couldn't explain why. The chapel called to me like a siren song. The heavy oak doors creaked softly as I pushed them open. Inside, candles flickered on the altar, casting dancing shadows across the stained glass windows. The scent of frankincense lingered in the air, mixing with something darker, something that reminded me of Federico himself. I walked slowly down the center aisle, my footsteps muffled by the plush carpet. The Madonna gazed down at me from her perch above the altar, her expression serene yet knowing. I wondered if she judged women like me, women who found themselves drawn to danger, to power, to men who could destroy them with a single word. "Beautiful, isn't she?" a deep voice said behind me. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs. Federico stood silhouetted in the doorway, his tall frame filling the space like he owned it, which, of course, he did. He wore dark trousers and a white shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. Even in the dim light, his presence commanded the room. "I didn't mean to intrude," I whispered, though we both knew that was a lie. "I'd been hoping he would find me here. I always enjoy your company, Rachel." "It's not an intrusion," he said softly. The way he said my name, like a prayer, like a curse, sent shivers down my spine. He moved toward me with that predatory grace I'd come to recognize, each step measured and deliberate. "Couldn't sleep either?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He stopped just arm's length away, close enough that I could smell his cologne, cedar and bergamot. "Sleep is for those with clear consciences," he murmured. "And yours isn't clear?" He studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes seeming to peer into my very soul. Then, unexpectedly, he smiled, not the calculated expression I'd grown accustomed to, but something raw and almost vulnerable. "Walk with me," he said gently. He led me to the front pew, and we sat together in the flickering candlelight. The silence stretched between us, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was charged, electric, like the moment before lightning strikes. My grandmother built this chapel, he began quietly. She believed that even men like us, men who live in darkness, need a place to kneel before something greater. And do you?
Kneel, I mean.
Every night, he admitted. I confess my sins to a God who already knows them all. There was something heartbreaking in his admission, a crack in the armor he wore so carefully. I found myself leaning closer, drawn by this glimpse of the man beneath the monster. What do you confess? That I want things I shouldn't have. That I take what doesn't belong to me. That I would burn the world down for the right woman, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. His eyes found mine, and I saw myself reflected in their depths. Not the timid marketing assistant who'd walked into that poker game 13 days ago, but someone stronger. Someone capable of matching his intensity. Federico, I began, but he held up a hand to stop me. My brother Barini is dying. Glioblastoma multiforme, the doctor calls it. An incurable brain cancer. He's got 6 months, maybe less, he said with quiet resignation. The revelation hit me like a physical force. I'd known there was tragedy in his family, but hearing it spoken aloud in this sacred space made it real. I'm sorry, I whispered, and meant it. When he dies, I become the head of this family.
The Dawn.
It's a legacy that stretches back 4 generations, built on blood and loyalty and fear, he continued. He turned to face me fully, his expression intense. A man in my position needs the right woman beside him. Not a decoration. Not a victim. A partner. A queen who can rule in her own right, he said earnestly. My breath caught in my throat. What are you saying? I'm saying that from the moment I heard your voice on that phone, I knew. You're not here by accident, Rachel. You're here because this is where you belong, he replied with conviction. The words should have terrified me. 2 weeks ago, they would have. But sitting there in that chapel, with candlelight flickering across his sharp features, I felt something shift inside me. A door opening that I'd kept locked for too long. What if I'm not that kind of woman? I asked, my voice barely audible. Then I'll make you one, he said with dark promise. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away. When I didn't, his fingers traced the line of my jaw with reverent care. His touch was electric, sending sparks through every nerve ending. You scare me, I admitted. Good. Fear keeps you alive in my world. But I don't want your fear, Rachel. I want your fire, he said huskily. He leaned closer, and I could feel his breath against my lips. The space between us crackled with tension, with want, with something deeper and more dangerous than mere attraction. When his lips finally touched mine, it was unlike anything I've ever experienced. It was reverent yet sinful, gentle yet demanding. It tasted of forbidden fruit and holy wine, of salvation and damnation wrapped together. I kissed him back with a hunger that surprised me, my hands fisting in his shirt as if I could anchor myself to him. He groaned against my mouth, a sound that was pure male satisfaction, and pulled me closer until there was no space left between us. The Madonna watched from above as we broke apart, both breathing heavily. Federico's eyes were dark with desire, but there was something else there, possession, yes, but also something that looked dangerously like love. Mine, he whispered against my lips, and I didn't argue, couldn't argue, because in that moment, in that sacred space filled with shadows and candlelight, I realized that maybe I didn't want to belong to myself anymore. Maybe I wanted to belong to him. The clock chimed 1, then 2, but we remained there in our bubble of stolen time, trading soft kisses and softer confessions. And with each passing moment, I felt the last pieces of my old life, my safe, small, suffocating life, crumbling away. By the time we finally parted and returned to our separate rooms, I knew there would be no going back. The woman who had entered that chapel was gone. The woman who emerged was someone entirely new. Someone who might just be worthy of standing beside a powerful man.
Chapter 9. Spiral.
I have my phone back now, free to use it without limits. Before, Federico rationed my access, just enough to report my whereabouts and convince my best friend nothing was wrong. 2 weeks. That's how long I have been in Federico's world, and already Kyle feels like a stranger from another lifetime. When my phone rings and I see his name, I almost don't answer. But curiosity wins. Or maybe it's pity. Rachel, thank God. His voice cracks through the speaker, desperate and raw. I've been trying to reach you for days. I know. I keep my tone neutral, walking into the garden. The roses here bloom darker than any I've seen, almost burgundy in the afternoon light. What do you want, Kyle? What do I want? Jesus, Rachel, you're being held by a monster, and you ask what I want. Monster. The word should resonate, but it doesn't. Federico, who brings me rare books because he noticed me reading. Federico, who debates philosophy over chess. Federico, who hasn't touched me beyond a brush of fingers, despite having every right according to Kyle's wager. I'm not being held, I say quietly. I'm here because you bet me and lost. Don't. He breaks off, and I hear something crash in the background. I went to the FBI, Rachel. Told them everything about the Clemenza family. They said they can't do anything without proof, without you filing a complaint. But I got the local police to agree to a wellness check. They'll be there within the hour. My blood turns cold. What the heck? You did what? I'm saving you. This man is like R. Kelly, the black R&B singer, that predator who kept women. He's brainwashing you, Rachel. Can't you see that? The only thing I see, I say, standing abruptly, is a coward who gambled away his fiancée and now can't live with the consequences. I hang up before he can respond, my hands shaking. Not from fear, from rage. How dare he? After everything, how dare he play the hero now? I find Federico in his study, and his eyes lift from documents the moment I enter. He always knows when something's wrong. The police are coming, I say. Kyle called them.
Interesting. I watch Rachel pace my study, her agitation beautiful in its intensity. 2 weeks in my home, and she comes to warn me about police. Not to celebrate potential rescue, to warn me. He told them you're holding me against my will. She continues, wringing her hands. That you're assaulting me, brainwashing me. He actually compared you to... She pauses, color rising in her cheeks. To whom? I ask, though I can guess. Men like Kyle always reach for the same tired comparisons when they're losing. A famous R&B singer who preyed on women. I lean back in my chair, studying her. And what will you tell them when they arrive? She stops pacing, meets my eyes directly. The truth, that I'm here of my own free will. That you've been nothing but respectful. That Kyle is a pathetic man trying to undo his own mistakes. Even though that's not entirely true, I ask softly, you didn't come here of your own free will initially. No, she agrees, lifting her chin. But I'm staying of my own free will. There's a difference. The doorbell rings 40 minutes later. 2 officers, badges gleaming, suspicious eyes scanning my foyer. I let them in graciously, offer them water, which they decline. We're here to check on a Ms. Rachael Hathaway, the older one says. We received a concerning report. Of course. I gesture to the sitting room. Rachel is in the garden. I'll get her, but she's already walking in, having heard the doorbell. She looks composed, elegant even in the designer dress I had delivered yesterday. Nothing about her suggests distress. Officers, she greets them warmly. I assume Kyle sent you. They exchange glances. Mr. Stevens expressed concern for your welfare, ma'am. He claims you're being held here against your will. Rachel actually laughs, not forced, but genuine. Kyle would claim anything to avoid accepting that I'm done with him. Officers, I'm here because I choose to be. Mr. Clemenza has been nothing but a gentleman. I'm free to leave whenever I wish. And you don't wish to leave? No, I don't, she says firmly. They ask a few more questions and take some notes. I provide my identification, explain that I'm a legitimate businessman with investments in real estate and freight logistics. All true if incomplete. They leave with barely concealed frustration, and I suspect Kyle will be hearing from them about false reports. The moment they're gone, Rachel's phone rings. She answers on speaker, and Kyle's voice fills the room. How could you? How could you lie to them? I didn't lie, she says coldly. You, on the other hand, did. This needs to stop, Kyle. Stop? He's a killer, Rachel. Did you know that? Your precious Federico killed a girl when he was 18. Hit and run. The family covered it up, but I found out. Dan from the newspaper. He knows people who know. You're pathetic, Rachel says, but her eyes find mine, questioning. It's true, I say calmly, loud enough for Kyle to hear. October 15th, 17 years ago. Her name was Harper Madison, 19 years old, nursing student.
The silence stretches between us after I end Kyle's call. Federico hasn't moved from his position by the window, backlit by the dying afternoon sun. He just confessed to killing someone, and he looks completely at peace with it. You want details? He says. Yes. I was racing, young, reckless, convinced I was invincible. I blew through the red light, speeding down a quiet street. She was crossing on her bike, and I hit her. He then turns to face me fully. I called my father instead of an ambulance. By the time his people arrived, she was dead. They made it disappear. Do you regret it? I regret that she died. I don't regret protecting my family. I should be horrified. I should run. Instead, I think about how Kyle never once took responsibility for anything, not his gambling, not his debts, not wagering me like property. Federico owns his darkness, without excuses. Kyle thinks this will drive me away. I say quietly, will it? I walk closer to him, close enough to smell his cologne, that mix of wood and spice that's become dangerously familiar. You're not a good man, Federico. No, he agrees. I'm not. But neither am I, apparently. The words surprise me as they leave my mouth. A good woman would be horrified. A good woman would have left the moment the police offered her an out. But I'm still here. He reaches out, fingers ghosting along my jaw. My Karla Homolka. What's that? Look it up later when you're alone, he says, dropping his hand. See if you recognize yourself. That night, I do. I sit in my room and Google the name, Karla Homolka. She was the wife and accomplice of Canada's most notorious criminal. A woman who helped her husband commit the sickest and most terrible of crimes, who participated willingly, who was devoted beyond reason or morality. The comparison should terrify me. Instead, I find myself studying her face in pictures of when she was my age, looking for similarities. Not in features, but in something deeper. That capacity for devotion that crosses into darkness. That willingness to follow someone into hell if they make you feel alive enough. I think about Kyle, about 5 years of being diminished, of being bet away like a poker chip. Then I think about Federico, who sees something dangerous in me and calls it beautiful. When I finally sleep, I dream of lions and blood and feel no fear at all.
Chapter 10. A Day to Remember.
I wake to find my room transformed. Balloons in silver and gold cluster in the corners. Streamers cascade from the ceiling, and the air smells like vanilla and cinnamon, my favorite combination. On the nightstand sits a card in Federico's distinctive handwriting. 31 years of becoming who you're meant to be. Tonight, we celebrate. My birthday. In the chaos of everything, I'd almost forgotten. When I venture downstairs, the transformation continues throughout the mansion. The usually austere halls bloom with decorations, and I can hear activity from the ballroom, a space I've only glimpsed before. Staff members wish me happy birthday as I pass, and I realize Federico must have told everyone. I find him in the dining room, overseeing preparations with the intensity he brings to everything. You didn't have to do this, I say, though my heart races at the effort evident everywhere. He turns, eyes scanning me with that penetrating gaze. You deserve to be celebrated, Rachel.
Properly.
Not with convenience store wine and forgotten promises. The jab at Kyle is subtle but precise. How many birthdays had Kyle forgotten until the last minute? How many celebrations consisted of hasty apologies and rain checks? I've invited your family, Federico continues. Your parents, your sister, your best friend Mia as well. They'll arrive at 7. My throat tightens. You contacted my family? You've been here over 2 weeks. They deserve to see you are well, and you deserve to have them here. He steps closer. Unless you'd prefer otherwise? No, I thank you. The words feel inadequate. This is more than anyone's ever. It's what you deserve, he repeats, and the way he says it makes me believe it might be true. The afternoon passes in a blur of preparations. A stylist arrives with dress options, not demanding I wear something specific, but offering choices. I select a deep emerald gown that makes me feel powerful, elegant. My mother would approve, I think, and realize how long it's been since I've seen her without Kyle's sullen presence beside me. When 7 arrives, I descend the stairs to find my family already there, champagne in hand, faces bright with something I haven't seen in years. Genuine happiness for me. My mother rushes over, pulls me into a hug that smells like her signature perfume. Darling, you look radiant, she says, pulling back to study me. Absolutely radiant. Mom, No explanations needed, she says quietly. Not tonight. Tonight is about you. My father, usually reserved, kisses my cheek and murmurs, your gentleman friend has been very gracious. Quite different from. He doesn't say Kyle's name. No one does. It's as if by unspoken agreement, he doesn't exist in this space. Mia arrives fashionably late, as always, and her eyes widen at the surroundings. Okay, explain to me again why you'd ever leave this place, she whispers, making me laugh. The ballroom is transformed into something from a dream. Fairy lights create constellations overhead, and a table holds gifts I didn't expect. But Federico stands near a covered screen, and there's something in his expression that makes my pulse quicken. Before we dine, he announces, I thought we should remember the journey. The screen illuminates, and my life begins playing in carefully curated moments. Videos I didn't know existed, me as a child, blowing out birthday candles. College graduation, my face bright with possibility. Moments with family, with friends, accomplishments at work I thought no one noticed. The montage is beautiful, thoughtful, showing a life that matters. But then the screen shifts, and a familiar face appears. My hand flies to my mouth. Oh my God. Mia gasps beside me. It's her. It's Taylor Swift. The voice unmistakable, the smile directed at the camera, at me. Hi, Rachel. The recording begins, and I can't breathe. I heard it's your 31st birthday, and I wanted to wish you the happiest day. 31 is such a special age, You're coming into your power, becoming who you're meant to be. I hope this year brings you everything you've been dreaming of and more. Happy birthday, Rachel. This is your year to shine. The room erupts in amazement, but I can't move. She knew my name. She spoke to me personally, individually. The woman whose songs carried me through every heartbreak, whose lyrics gave me strength when I had none. She wished me happy birthday. I don't realize I'm crying until Federico hands me a handkerchief, an actual handkerchief, because of course he carries one. Our eyes meet, and I see satisfaction there, but something else too. Pride, maybe. In me. In my reaction. In this moment he's created. How? I managed to ask. I have connections, he says simply. And I told them about a remarkable woman who deserved something extraordinary. The party continues, dinner, laughter, stories. My father actually smiles. My mother hasn't mentioned Kyle's absence once, though I catch her watching Federico with interest. He's charming with them, respectful but not obsequious, making my father laugh with stories about business, complimenting my mother's insights about art. He's different, my sister whispers to me during dessert. From what you usually settle for. I know, I say, watching Federico across the room, how he commands space without demanding it. As the evening winds down, my family prepares to leave. My mother hugs me tightly and whispers, "Be happy, darling. Whatever that looks like for you." When everyone's gone, Federico and I stand alone in the ballroom. The fairy lights still twinkle overhead, and soft music plays from hidden speakers. "Dance with me," he says, extending his hand. I take it, let him pull me close. We move slowly, and I'm hyper-aware of every point of contact. His hand on my waist, mine on his shoulder, the heat of him through expensive fabric. This was perfect, I tell him. Beyond perfect. You haven't opened your gift yet, he says, producing a black velvet box from his jacket. Inside lies a bracelet that catches the light like captured stars. 5 delicate motifs in what I recognize as the distinctive Van Cleef design, something I'd admired in magazines but never imagined owning. "Federico, this is yours," he says firmly, taking it from the box. "May I?" I extend my wrist, and he clasps it with careful precision. His fingers linger on my pulse point, and I wonder if he can feel how it races. "Thank you." I breathe, and the words carry weight beyond the gift. "You never have to thank me for giving you what you deserve," he says, and his thumb traces the delicate bones of my wrist. Though I wonder if you're beginning to understand what that truly is. What I deserve. Everything, he says simply.
Power, passion, purpose.
A life that matches the fire I see in you. The music changes, something slower, more intimate. Federico pulls me closer, and I let him, feeling the solid strength of him, the controlled power. "Rachel," he says, and my name on his lips sounds like a prayer and a claim all at once. "Yes. In 11 days, you're free to leave. The wager complete." His hand tightens on my waist. "I want you to know, that changes nothing for me." "What do you mean?" "I mean I didn't keep you here for 28 days because of a bet," he says, eyes burning into mine. "I kept you here because from the moment I heard your voice on that phone, I knew you belonged in my world. The wager was just the excuse." My breath catches. "And if I want to stay?" "Then you stay as my other half. My choice. My obsession." He leans closer, lips near my ear. "My queen." The word shoots through me like electricity. Not girlfriend, not woman, not even wife, but queen. Like I'm meant to rule beside him. "You barely know me." I protest weakly. "I know you defend me to police. I know you hear about Harper Madison and don't run. I know you understand loyalty in ways that would terrify ordinary people." His lips brush my temple. I know you're already mine, even if you haven't admitted it yet.
And he's right.
God help me, he's right. Somewhere between that first chess game and tonight, between his careful distance and intense focus, I've fallen into something I can't name, but can't deny. 11 more days, I say, not quite agreeing, but not denying either. 11 more days, he agrees, spinning me one last time as the music fades. But we both know the countdown isn't to my freedom anymore. It's to my choosing. And looking at him in the fairy light, feeling the weight of his gift on my wrist and his gaze on my face, I think we both already know what I'll choose.
Chapter 11. Getting deeply involved.
Following my birthday, each day melted into the next like watercolor pigments in a downpour. Federico had shown me glimpses of his world before, the elegant dinners, the coded conversations, the subtle displays of power. But now, as we moved deeper into our arrangement, he began peeling back layers I hadn't even known existed. "You want to understand me," he said on the morning of day 18, his voice carrying that familiar note of certainty that made my pulse quicken. "Then you need to see all of me." I stood at the window of his study, watching the grounds crew tend to the immaculate gardens. Everything here was controlled, purposeful. Even the roses were trained to grow exactly as Federico willed them. "I'm not sure I'm ready for that," I admitted, though the words felt like a lie even as they left my lips. The truth was I craved understanding him. Every mystery he revealed only made me hunger for more. He moved behind me, close enough that I could feel the heat radiating from his body. "Rachel." His breath stirred the hair at my nape. "You've been ready since the moment you defended me to Kyle. Since you chose to see strength where others see only brutality." That afternoon, he took me to a warehouse in Queens. From the outside, it looked abandoned, rusted metal siding, cracked windows, weeds growing through the pavement. But inside, it hummed with quiet efficiency. "This is where we clean our money," Federico explained, his hand settling at the small of my back as we walked through rows of workers at computer stations. Legitimate businesses generate legitimate income. Construction contracts, shipping manifests, restaurant receipts. All real. All traceable. All perfectly legal. I watched a young man, Kevin, Federico introduced him as, input numbers into a spreadsheet with the focused intensity of a surgeon. "How much goes through here? On a slow week? 7 figures." Federico's smile held no shame, only pride in the machine he'd helped build. "We employ over 200 people across our legitimate operations. They pay taxes, support families, contribute to their communities. And the illegitimate operations fund all of this." He gestured around us. The circle completes itself. I found myself studying the operation with professional interest. My marketing background had taught me to see systems, to identify inefficiencies and opportunities. "You're vulnerable on the digital side," I observed, watching Kevin work. "All these computer records create patterns. The FBI probably has algorithms designed to flag this exact type of activity." Federico's eyebrows rose slightly. "What would you suggest?" The question should have terrified me. Instead, I felt a thrill of recognition, as if I'd been preparing for this moment without realizing it. Diversification. More cash-heavy businesses. Laundromats, car washes, small restaurants in ethnic neighborhoods where cash transactions are normal. And randomization. Never use the same deposit amounts or timing patterns twice. Interesting. His eyes gleamed with something that looked suspiciously like pride. "Tony handles our digital security." "Tony," he called to a man working at a corner station. "Come here." Tony approached, middle-aged, serious, with the careful posture of someone who'd learned to read dangerous men. Federico introduced me simply as someone whose opinion I value and asked me to repeat my suggestions. As I spoke, I watched Tony's expression shift from skepticism to grudging respect. These weren't idle observations from someone playing at understanding crime. These were practical solutions from someone who genuinely grasped the challenges they faced. She's right about the patterns, Tony admitted. We've been thinking about implementing something similar. Then do it, Federico said. Coordinate with Rachael on the details. The casual way he included me in their planning should have sent up red flags. Instead, it felt like recognition, like finally being seen for what I was capable of, not just what others expected me to be. By day 20, our meetings had become routine. Each morning, Federico would brief me on various aspects of the operation, not just the money laundering, but the entire ecosystem. Protection services for legitimate businesses. Import-export operations that moved both legal and illegal goods. Real estate development that revitalized neighborhoods while providing convenient locations for various enterprises. You see, he said during one of our sessions, spreading architectural plans across his desk. We're not parasites. We're gardeners. We plant, we tend, we harvest. The community prospers. I traced the blueprints with my finger, a mixed-use development that would bring affordable housing and retail space to a struggling area in Brooklyn. And the illegal activities? Hidden in plain sight. A percentage of the retail spaces will house our operations. The residential units provide housing for our people and their families. The construction contracts go to companies we influence. He leaned back in his chair, watching me study the plans. Everything serves multiple purposes. It's elegant, I admitted. And it was.
Brutal, certainly.
Illegal, absolutely. But elegant in its complexity and integration. You understand, he said, and there was satisfaction in his voice that made warmth bloom in my chest. Most people see only the violence, the criminality. They miss the artistry. I looked up from the blueprints to find him watching me with an intensity that made my breath catch. Is that what you want from me? Understanding? Among other things. His smile was slow, predatory. But understanding is where it begins. On day 22, he took me to a meeting. You don't speak unless spoken to, he instructed as we rode the elevator to the penthouse suite of a midtown hotel. You observe. You learn. You become invisible. The suite was filled with men I recognized from the fundraiser dinner. Roberto Vieri, Christian Baggio, others whose names I'd overheard in various conversations. They were discussing a territorial dispute with a rival family, something about shipping routes and port access. I sat beside Federico, playing the part of the decorative woman, while internally cataloging everything I heard. Routes, schedules, personnel, weaknesses in their opponents' operations. It was like a complex business negotiation, except the stakes were measured in blood rather than dollars. The Salieri family thinks they can push us out of the Brooklyn docks, Roberto was saying, his voice thick with disdain. They're young and arrogant. They need to be educated. Education can take many forms, Federico replied smoothly. Not all of them require violence. He proceeded to outline a strategy that was breathtaking in its sophistication. Rather than direct confrontation, he proposed a campaign of economic pressure. Delayed shipments, labor disputes, regulatory scrutiny, financial audits. Death by 1,000 cuts, each one deniable, each one legal. You strangle them slowly, he explained. They never see the hand around their throat until it's too late to fight back. Watching him command the room, seeing the respect and fear in these dangerous men's eyes, I felt something shift inside me. This wasn't just attraction anymore. This was recognition of true power, the kind that shaped the world from shadows. Days 23 through 25 blurred together in a haze of revelation and arousal. Federico showed me safe houses where witnesses disappeared into new identities. Import operations that moved everything from art to weapons. Financial networks that spanned continents. Each revelation should have horrified me. Instead, they fascinated me. "You're not shocked," he observed on day 24, after showing me ledgers detailing bribes paid to judges, prosecutors, and police officials. "Should I be?" I countered. "You think I believed the world ran on fairness and justice? I've watched good people get destroyed, while corrupt ones prospered my entire life. At least you're honest about the game you're playing." His smile was approving. "Most people prefer their comfortable illusions. Most people are cowards." The words surprised me as much as they seemed to please him. 3 weeks ago, I would have called views like that privileged and out of touch, and now I am voicing them because somehow they feel true. Kyle had been a coward, gambling with things that weren't his to risk. Some of my coworkers were cowards, accepting mediocrity rather than fighting for what they wanted. Even I had been a coward, staying in a relationship that diminished me rather than demanding better. "Yes," Federico said softly. "They are." On day 26, he asked for my help with something specific. "The Salieri situation requires a delicate touch," he explained over dinner. "Too much pressure too quickly, and they'll realize what's happening. Too little, and they'll think they can weather the storm." I set down my wine glass, studying his face. "What kind of help?" "Your marketing background. You understand campaigns, timing, public perception." He leaned forward slightly. "Help me design their destruction." The request should have appalled me. Instead, it sent electricity through my veins. This wasn't just inclusion, it was partnership. He wasn't just showing me his world, he was asking me to help shape it. "I'll need details," I heard myself saying. "Their operations, their weaknesses, their public profile. Everything you have on them." His smile was brilliant, transformative. "Of course," he said delightfully. We spent the rest of the evening planning. I suggested targeting their legitimate businesses first, a chain of restaurants that served as fronts for their money laundering. Anonymous tips to health inspectors, labor violations reported to the Department of Labor, tax audits triggered by carefully crafted complaints. Create chaos in their legal operations, I explained, sketching out a timeline on his notepad. Force them to divert attention and resources. While they're putting out fires in their restaurants, you move against their illegal activities. "Brilliant," he murmured, watching me work with an expression I'd never seen before. "You see the connections, the cascading effects." "It's just systems thinking," I said, but my pulse was racing. Everything connects to everything else. You just have to find the right pressure points. Day 27 dawned with a sense of completion I hadn't expected. Our arrangement was supposed to end tomorrow, but it no longer felt like an ending. It felt like a transformation. The woman who would walk out of this house bore little resemblance to the one who had entered it 27 days ago. "No regrets?" Federico asked that evening as we stood on his balcony, looking out over the city lights. I considered the question seriously. 27 days ago, I would have said I was a good person. Law-abiding, moral, concerned with doing the right thing. Now I had helped plan the systematic destruction of people I'd never met, and I felt no remorse. Only satisfaction at a strategy well-crafted. "None," I said and meant it. He moved behind me, his arms encircling my waist, pulling me back against the solid warmth of his chest. "Tomorrow you're free to go." "I know. Will you?" The question hung between us like a challenge. Tomorrow, Kyle would be waiting. Tomorrow, I could return to my old life, my small apartment, my mediocre job, my safe choices. I could pretend these 27 days had been an aberration, a temporary madness brought on by extraordinary circumstances. Or I could choose something else entirely. Ask me tomorrow, I whispered, leaning into his embrace. His laugh was low, knowing. I think I already know your answer. As the city sparkled below us, I realized he was right. Tonight, I felt nothing but pride in helping orchestrate another family's downfall. I wasn't the same woman who had been wagered 27 days ago. That woman had been a victim, acted upon rather than acting. This woman was something else entirely. This woman was dangerous. And I found I liked her very much indeed.
Chapter 12. 28 Days, 28 Nights.
The 28th day arrived like the tolling of a funeral bell. Every hour since dawn had pressed heavier upon my chest, as though time itself wanted me to remember. This was the day I was free.
Free.
A word that no longer tasted like liberation, but like loss. I dressed slowly, savoring the silk blouse Federico had left for me the night before. It wasn't his usual way to leave gifts without comment, but then again, everything about today felt muted. The mansion's usual low hum of footsteps and distant voices was gone, as though the house itself understood the gravity of this ending. When I caught my reflection in the gilded mirror, I barely recognized myself. My posture straighter, my eyes sharper, my hair cascading in soft auburn waves Federico had once said reminded him of firelight. I was not the woman Kyle had wagered. I was not the woman who had stumbled into this house, furious and humiliated. I was something else now. And yet, the world beyond these walls, my old life, waited for me. He came to me just before dusk. Federico filled the doorway without knocking, his presence as commanding as ever. His suit was black, crisp, but it was his eyes that held me, the same gaze that had stripped me bare night after night, though he had never once touched me without permission. "Your time is up," he said, voice low and even. The words should have been mercy. Instead, they broke me. I turned, fingers tightening around the window frame. So that's it? 28 days, 28 nights, and I just leave?
You are free, he said.
No debt remains. No bargain binds you now. His face gave nothing away, but something in his voice betrayed restraint, as if the words tasted bitter even to him. I wanted him to say stay. I wanted him to demand it the way he demanded everything else. But Federico Clemenza never begged. And so he let me walk. The car ride was silent. Ralph drove me back into the city, the gates closing behind us like the final page of a chapter one wasn't ready to finish. My chest ached, the air thick with the absence of him. When the car slowed, my heart sank. Kyle. He stood on the curb, shifting nervously under the streetlight, his hands stuffed into his jacket pockets. His face was pale, eyes bloodshot. He looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. The moment I stepped out, he rushed forward. "Rach, thank God you're all right." I let him hug me. His arms felt wrong. Too tight, too needy. "Let's just go home," he whispered, as though saying it fast enough could erase the past 28 days. Back at the apartment, everything was the same. The chipped paint, the stale smell of whiskey and takeout, the sagging couch that had absorbed too many arguments. Kyle hovered, restless. "I've been losing my mind without you. I thought he'd taken you for good." "He released me," I said flatly. "Released you?" His laugh was bitter. "Like you're some hostage in a movie?" "Jesus, Rach." I turned on him then, my voice trembling with fury I hadn't allowed myself to feel until now. "That's exactly what I was, Kyle. Do you even hear yourself? You gave me away. You made me into a bargaining chip." His face flushed. "I made a mistake. But I did it because I was desperate. You know what gambling does to me. You knew. I knew you had a problem. I didn't know you would sell me." The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. We sat across from each other at the kitchen table, the same table where we'd once planned trips we never took, dreamed about children we never tried to have. Kyle rubbed his temples. I'm getting help, baby. I swear to you, I've been going to meetings. I've got a new coin.
Here it is, baby.
3 weeks clean. I haven't gambled in 3 weeks. I stared at him, searching for the man I had once loved. But all I saw was a ghost clinging to excuses. You should keep going, I said softly.
For you, not for me.
His eyes widened. What do you mean?
Of course it's for you.
It's for us. There is no us anymore. The words spilled before I could stop them, and once spoken, they set me free. I've spent these 28 days realizing how small my life has been, how much of myself I've sacrificed waiting for you to change. And I'm done. His mouth opened, then closed, fury simmering beneath his skin. You're breaking up with me? He spat. After everything I've done for you? After everything we've been through? You didn't do it for me, Kyle. You did it to feed your addiction. You loved the gamble more than you loved me. For a moment, I thought he would cry. Instead, his face twisted with venom. He sold you a fantasy, Kyle snapped, his voice sharp with rage. That's all this is. Fantasy. I loved you when you were nothing, when you were insecure and nobody wanted you. And now you want to throw it all away just to be some mafia whore? The words echoed in the stale air. They didn't hurt. They revealed. I looked at him, truly looked at him, and realized how little of myself remained in this place. The walls were suffocating, the man in front of me a mirror of every mistake I had been too afraid to leave. No, Kyle, I whispered. I want to throw it all away to finally be someone. I rose, his stunned silence following me down the hallway. At 11:58, I stood by the door, coat in hand. Where are you going? Kyle's voice was groggy, laced with dread. I turned. Somewhere I belong. If you walk out that door, don't come back, he growled. I held his gaze. I'm not coming back. And then I left. The city shimmered in midnight's glow as I returned to the only place that now felt like home. The Clemenza estate loomed, its gates swinging open without hesitation, as though even the iron recognized my choice. Inside, the air was warmer, thicker, charged. He was waiting. Federico stood at the foot of the grand staircase, his suit jacket undone, his eyes burning into mine as if my absence had been a torment he refused to confess. I wasn't sure you'd return, he said, his voice low, rougher than usual. I'm not here because I lost. My steps carried me toward him, each one surer than the last. I'm here because I win beside you. Something fractured in his composure. For a man who lived by control, the unraveling was exquisite. He closed the distance in 2 strides, his hand cupping my face, his thumb brushing my lips as though he had been starving for this touch. Say it again, he demanded, breath hot against my mouth. I choose you, Federico. And then there was no space left between us. His kiss was not tentative. It was a claim, a vow, a fire that burned away every remnant of doubt. The wager had ended, but the devotion that bound us was only beginning, deadly, eternal, undeniable.
Chapter 13. Severed.
It's been 3 days since I chose Federico. Since I stopped pretending that my life with Kyle had been anything but a slow suffocation dressed as love. Now, sitting in the passenger seat of Federico's sleek black Maserati, the city blurred by, I realized how final today was.
I was going to my apartment for the last time. Not to stay.
Just to collect the pieces of a life that no longer fit. Federico drove in silence, one hand on the wheel, the other resting possessively over my knee. Even when his eyes were on the road, I felt them on me, always. watching, measuring, claiming. When we pulled up outside the old apartment, he cut the engine but didn't move. His jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the brick building that had once been my whole world. "I'll wait here," he said at last, voice low and deliberate. "This is your past, Rachel. I won't step into it unless you need me to." The words should have reassured me. Instead, they felt like a warning. I squeezed his hand. "I won't be long." The apartment smelled the same: stale whiskey, sweat, and the faint trace of my old perfume clinging to the curtains. As the door creaked shut behind me, a chill swept through me. This place was haunted, not by ghosts, but by memories of everything I had endured here. I wasn't alone. Kyle stood in the living room, as though he'd been waiting. His hair was unkempt, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights or endless tears. He looked like ruin in human form. "Rachel," he breathed, stepping forward. "You came back." I froze, clutching the strap of my purse like a weapon. "I told you, I only came to pick up my things."
His mouth twisted.
"You don't mean that. You don't. You're just confused. That bastard has his claws in you. But I can fix this. I can fix us." I set my bag on the table and began gathering the few belongings I wanted to keep: photographs, books, clothes that didn't remind me of nights filled with arguments and apologies that meant nothing. Kyle hovered, his desperation growing with every item I packed. "Don't do this," he pleaded. "Don't throw away 5 years because of a mistake. I know I hurt you. I know I gambled when I should have protected you. But I've changed. I'm clean. I'm sober. I'm ready to be the man you always wanted me to be." I stopped, turning to face him. His words might have meant something months ago, but not now. "You're saying all the right things, Kyle," I said softly. "But it's too late. I don't love you anymore." The truth hung between us like smoke, choking the air. His expression crumbled, then hardened into something darker. "You're leaving me for him." The word dripped with venom. "You love him." My silence was answer enough. Rage contorted his features. "After everything I'd done for you? After I pulled you out of nothing, gave you a home, gave you love, and this is how you repay me? By crawling into bed with a monster?" I shook my head. Federico didn't steal me. He showed me what it feels like to be seen,
To be wanted.
to matter. Kyle's laugh was bitter, ugly. "He brainwashed you. You think you're special? You're not. You're just another toy to him. You're acting like you had choices, like you weren't the damn prize in a game I didn't mean to lose." I flinched, but not from his words, from the truth they revealed. He hadn't seen me as a partner. I'd been a possession, a bet he thought he'd win. "There's no fixing this, Kyle," I said firmly. "It's over." His voice dropped, low and dangerous. "If you walk away from me, you'll regret it. You're mine, Rachel. You'll always be mine." And then he snapped. His hand shot out, grabbing my wrist with bruising force. "You think you can just leave? After everything I gave you? Let go." I hissed, yanking back, but his grip tightened. His other hand struck me across the face, the crack of skin against skin ringing through the room. My vision blurred, my cheeks stinging. "You think you're better than me now?" he snarled, shoving me toward the bedroom. "I'll remind you who you belong to." Terror flared, but beneath it, rage burned hotter. I struggled, clawing at his arms, but he was stronger, fueled by desperation and hate. He threw me onto the bed, his weight pinning me down. His breath reeked of whiskey as he leaned close, spittle flying. "You are mine," he growled, fumbling with his belt. "You'll always be mine. I'll make sure you never forget it." "Get off me." My scream tore from my throat, raw and furious. And then, salvation. The door burst open, slamming against the wall. Federico. He crossed the room like a storm, his eyes blazing with murder. In one brutal motion, he ripped Kyle off me, sending him crashing to the floor. You dare touch her? Federico's voice was a snarl, primal and terrifying. Kyle scrambled, but Federico was faster. He whipped his pistol across Kyle's face, the crack of metal against bone echoing. Blood sprayed, Kyle's scream muffled by the blow. Federico stood over him, chest heaving, pistol raised again. But then, he turned, his fury softening as his eyes found me. Rachel, he said, voice breaking through the haze of violence. Are you hurt? Tears blurred my vision as I sat up, clutching my torn blouse. My body shook, but my voice was steady. He tried to force himself on me. The words ignited something in him. Pure, lethal rage. Federico didn't hesitate. He turned back to Kyle, who was whimpering, begging, blood dripping down his face. Please don't. The gunshots silenced him. The room filled with the acrid stench of gunpowder, the ringing echo of the shot lingering like a final judgment. Kyle's body slumped, blood pooling across the floor. I should have screamed. I should have turned away. Instead, I stared, numb, my chest rising and falling with shallow breaths. Federico lowered the gun, his hand trembling once before he mastered himself. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw it. Rage, yes, but also devotion. A vow sealed in blood. You're safe now, he said quietly. And for the first time in my life, I believed it.
Chapter 14. The Lion's Claim.
Kyle's blood was still wet on the floor. The gunshots' echo lingered in the walls, sharp and absolute. The bastard lay crumpled, his head twisted at an unnatural angle, his chest heaving in broken gasps, each breath wet with a rattle that promised the end. And yet, for the first time since I pulled the trigger, I wasn't looking at him. I was looking at her. Rachel sat on the bed, chest heaving, auburn hair spilling wild over her shoulders. Her blouse was ripped, hanging loose to expose the curve of her breast, pale flesh flushed with fear and adrenaline. Her skirt had ridden up in the struggle, torn at the seam, bearing the smooth length of her thigh. The sight was ruinous, a weapon far more dangerous than any pistol. The rage in me shifted, molten and uncontrollable. Anger became hunger. Murder became need. I crossed the room slowly, the pistol still warm in my hand. She didn't shrink away. She didn't beg. She looked at me with wide, fever-bright eyes, shaken but unbroken. Blood spattered her cheek. I reached down, thumb brushing it away. She shuddered under my touch, but not from fear. You're safe now, I said, though my voice was thick with something far more primal. Her lips parted. No words came, only a tremor of breath. Her legs pressed together instinctively, as though trying to shield herself from what she already knew was coming. But her eyes, Christ, her eyes, they told a different story. Not defiance, not resistance, something between terror and invitation. I set the pistol on the nightstand. The metallic clink sounded like a verdict. Then I leaned down, letting my gaze travel over her ripped blouse, the flushed skin of her chest, the long line of her thigh. You don't know what you do to me. I murmured, my voice a growl against her ear. Seeing you like this, torn, trembling, marked by him. I should be consoling you, but all I want is to claim you, to mark you as mine before the blood on this floor dries. Her breath hitched. I traced a line down her cheek, over her jaw, across the hollow of her throat. Her pulse hammered beneath my fingertip. You're trembling. I whispered. Is it fear or desire? Her silence was answer enough. I stepped back, letting the air stretch taut between us. "Kneel," I commanded. The word cut through the room like a blade. For a moment, she hesitated. Then, slowly, she slid off the bed, her torn blouse falling wider to reveal the soft swell of her cleavage. She sank to her knees on the floor, head bowed, hair curtaining her face. Christ, nothing had ever looked so right. I reached down, gripping her chin, forcing her to look up at me. Her eyes glistened, but there was no cowardice there, only surrender and something colder beneath it. "Do you submit?" My voice was hoarse, thick with lust and command. Her lips parted, the words trembling but resolute. "Yes," she said, "I submit, both body and mind. Now and always do with me as you wish." The sound nearly undid me. I cupped the back of her head, fingers tangling in her hair, tugging until her throat arched. My mouth crashed against hers, a violent claim that tasted of salt and tears and iron. She gasped into me, clutching at my shirt, clinging not like a prisoner, but like a woman surrendering to the inevitable. I pulled away. My thumb dragged across her bruised lower lip. "You're mine now," I rasped. "Not because of a wager, not because of 28 nights, because you chose it. You chose me." Her eyes burned into mine, and in them I saw it. Devotion, yes, but also something sharper, a warning. If I betrayed this surrender, if I treated her like Kyle had, if I ever made her feel like a pawn again, then I would end as Kyle had, broken, bleeding, and forgotten. The knowledge thrilled me. It terrified me. It bound me tighter to her than chains ever could. "Good," I whispered. I pushed her down further, until she was kneeling low before me, her body a gift, her submission a weapon. "Now show me how much you mean it." Her lips trembled as she obeyed, and I let the lion in me consume her.
In the apartment, Kyle was waiting for me. His shadows stretched long across the floor when I stepped into the room, and for a moment I thought he looked smaller, beaten down, desperate. But then his eyes found mine, and the old venom was back. "You think he loves you?" His voice cracked, jagged with rage. "You think Federico Clemenza gives a damn about you? You're just a trophy, a prize, a hole he won in a game." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. The silence was enough. He saw it. The doubt was gone. The part of me he had controlled for years was gone too. That's when he snapped. Kyle's hand came down hard across my face, and before I could even stagger back, he was on me, shoving me into the wall, his spit hitting my cheek as he screamed. "You're mine, Rach. Do you hear me?
Mine.
I made you. I can still break you." The old me might have cowered. The old me might have cried. But all I felt was a strange clarity, a detached calm that chilled me even as he shook me. Because I knew I was no longer his. And then the gun went off. The crack split the air, deafening, final. Kyle jerked violently and stumbled, eyes wide with shock as blood bloomed across his shirt. He crumpled to the ground, gasping, clawing at the floor like he could crawl away from death. Federico stood behind him, smoke curling from the barrel of his pistol. His eyes weren't calm. They burned with a fury I had never seen before. He looked at Kyle not as a man, but as a carcass that had dared to trespass in a lion's den. "Touch her again," Federico growled, voice low, feral, "and you'll wish I hadn't been merciful." But there was no mercy left. Kyle coughed, choking, blood filling his mouth as he tried to form my name. His hand lifted weakly toward me, shaking. I didn't move, because Federico was already on me. He dropped the gun, grabbed me, and crushed his mouth against mine with a hunger that was more violence than kiss. His hands were rough, tearing at me, shoving me back until the world narrowed to nothing but his strength, his fury, his need. And I let him. I wanted him. Every thrust was a claim, every bruising grip a warning. You are mine now, and no one else will ever touch you again. He was no longer man but beast, staking his right to me over the dying body of the man who once owned me. Kyle whimpered, a wet, rattling sound, the last of him draining into the floor. But I didn't look at him. Not anymore. My eyes stayed locked on Federico's, on the blaze that consumed him as he moved inside me like a storm that would never end. My fiancé was dying in the shadows, and I was reborn in fire and blood, surrendering myself completely to the man who had destroyed him. When Kyle's last breath rattled free, I didn't feel grief, only release. And Federico felt it too. He groaned into my neck, his body shuddering as he buried himself deeper, as though stamping his seal into my soul. When he finally stilled, the room was silent but for our breaths, ragged and entwined. I leaned my forehead against his, trembling not from fear, but from something far more dangerous. This wasn't love. This was something darker, something primal. This was possession. And God help me, possession had never felt so much like freedom. Afterward, when Federico finally pulled away, I looked at Kyle's body. His hand was still stretched toward me, frozen in the moment he thought he could pull me back. I expected horror, revulsion, some trace of mourning. But there was nothing. Nothing but a cold, steady awareness. Kyle had never owned me. He had only borrowed me, feeding on my loyalty the way parasites feed on blood. Federico hadn't stolen me. He had revealed me. And the worst part? I wasn't horrified by what I had become. I was exhilarated. The woman who flinched when Kyle raised his voice was gone. The woman who rationalized every insult, every bruise, every betrayal. That woman was already rotting with him on the floor. In her place stood someone new. Someone who wanted more. Someone who burned with the kind of loyalty that didn't bow. It destroyed. Federico saw it. He cupped my face, his thumb dragging across the split in my lip where Kyle had struck me. His touch was rough and reverent, a silent acknowledgement of both the violence and the rebirth it had carved into me. You're mine now, he said softly, though there was no softness in his eyes. And you'll never belong to anyone else. I should have resisted. I should have feared what that meant. Instead, I nodded, because he was right. As Kyle's blood seeped into the cracks on the floor, I realized something chillingly clear. I was not meant for a quiet life, for safety, for softness. No gentle husband, no white picket future could satisfy the woman I had just discovered inside me. I was meant for this, for fire, for danger, for a man like Federico. And deep down, I knew this wasn't the end of my transformation. It was only the beginning.
Chapter 15. Meeting the Matriarch.
The private jet descended through wisps of cloud, and below us, the Veneto countryside spread like a Renaissance painting come to life. Golden Italian vineyards stretched toward distant mountains, their neat rows broken only by clusters of terracotta-roofed villas. Federico's hand found mine across the leather seats, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, a gesture that had become as natural as breathing over these past 2 months. I'd been nervous ever since he mentioned the annual family reunion. They'll want to meet you, he'd said casually. As though his family weren't the very architects of an organized crime group running criminal activities back in the United States. As though his mother's approval wasn't the kind of thing that could either bind me in gold or break me in silence. I clasped my hands together in my lap, watching sunlight flicker across my fingers. Are you nervous? His voice carried that particular blend of amusement and genuine concern that I'd learned to read like scripture. Yes, I admitted. Meeting Lucretia Clemenza wasn't just meeting Federico's mother. It was presenting myself to the matriarch of one of Italy's oldest crime families. Federico's dark eyes studied me with that intensity that still made my pulse quicken. My mother sees through everyone. It's her gift. He lifted my hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to my knuckles. But you, my dear, have nothing to hide. Nothing to hide. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 months ago, I'd walked away from Kyle, from 5 years of mediocrity and broken promises, straight into Federico's world of calculated violence and intoxicating power. I discovered parts of myself I never knew existed. Dark, hungry parts that Federico not only accepted but celebrated. After we disembarked, 2 men in black suits ushered us into a black Escalade flanked by 2 Ford Explorers. The drive to the family villa had a peculiar rhythm. The roads curved like they carried memory in their stones, each turn framed by hillsides striped with vines. The ancestral home appeared like something from an Italian painting. Stone walls pale against the late afternoon sun, a courtyard sprawling wide with a fountain at its center, its waters catching the light like scattered diamonds. Beyond, the vineyards stretched into the horizon, as though the family's veins themselves grew into the earth. When we parked, the air was alive with voices, laughter, greetings shouted in Italian, children chasing one another across the courtyard. Federico stepped out first, his presence commanding without effort. When he circled to open my door, I felt every gaze turn toward us. A young woman with Federico's same dark hair and sharp cheekbones flew down the steps, her designer dress billowing behind her. Fratello! Ginevra launched herself at Federico the moment we stepped away from the car. At 19, she had the fierce beauty of her bloodline, but none of its carefully cultivated restraint. Federico caught her easily, spinning her once before setting her down. You've grown, Piccola. It's been a year, she protested. Then her eyes found me. The assessment was immediate and thorough, a Clemenza trait I was learning. You must be Rachael. Before I could respond, she'd pulled me into an embrace that smelled of expensive perfume and sunshine.
We've heard so much about you.
Mother is beside herself with curiosity. Ginevra, let them breathe. Another woman descended the steps with more composure, Viola, 24, with 2 children clutching her skirts. She was softer than Ginevra, her beauty tempered by motherhood, but her eyes held the same sharp intelligence. Welcome to Villa Clemenza, Rachael. The children, a boy of perhaps 4 and a girl who couldn't have been more than 2, peered at me from behind their mother's legs. Federico crouched down, producing 2 wrapped packages from his jacket, like a magician. Zio Rico. They swarmed him, their earlier shyness forgotten. Watching Federico with his nephew and niece, seeing him gentle and playful, stirred something primal in me. This was a side of him I'd only glimpsed, the man beneath the calculated exterior, the one who could love as fiercely as he could destroy. Federico. The voice came from the doorway, and everything else faded. Lucretia Clemenza stood framed by ancient stone, a woman who wore her 60 years like armor. Her hair, still mostly dark with distinguished streaks of silver, was pulled back in an elegant chignon. She wore simple black, but on her, it looked regal. Federico straightened, and I saw the boy in him for just a moment, seeking approval, offering respect. He crossed to her, kissing both cheeks before stepping aside. Mother, this is Rachael. Lucretia's gaze found mine, and I understood what Federico meant about her seeing through people. Those eyes, the same dark intensity as her son's, seemed to catalog every secret, every desire, every shadow in my soul. "So," she said in accented English, "you're the woman who has captured my son's attention so completely." I met her gaze steadily. In Federico's world, showing weakness was the first step toward becoming prey. "And you're the woman who raised him to be extraordinary." She stepped forward, taking my face in her hands. Her palms were soft, but her grip was firm as she studied me. "Beautiful," she murmured, but I sensed she wasn't talking about my appearance. "Come, the others are waiting." The villa's interior was a study in understated elegance, frescoed ceilings, marble floors worn smooth by centuries of footsteps, furniture that belonged in museums but was used daily. The sound of voices and laughter drew us toward a massive dining room where at least 20 people had gathered. The introductions blurred together: cousins, aunts, uncles, Federico's brother-in-law Luigi, who'd driven from Florence. They welcomed me with the kind of boisterous warmth that seemed at odds with what I knew of this family's other life. But perhaps that was the point, to live fully in both worlds, neither apologizing for nor hiding from either. The afternoon dissolved into controlled chaos. Long tables stretched across the courtyard, bottles of Amarone and Ricciotto already opened and flowing. Everyone talked over one another, gestures flying, laughter erupting like music. I sat beside Federico, my glass in hand, feeling both foreign and woven into the tapestry at once. By 6 o'clock, the rhythm shifted. The men rose, heading toward the vineyard where cigars and loud debates about politics and football awaited. Lucretia clapped her hands gently, summoning the women. "Come, ragazza," she said, leading us to the kitchen. The space was alive with smells: fresh herbs, garlic, fish brought in from the market that morning. Laughter spilled into the air as women tied aprons over dresses, dividing tasks seamlessly. I found myself slicing fennel under Viola's instruction while Ginevra plucked basil leaves, her fingers moving quickly. Lucretia worked at the stove, her movements efficient, commanding without being harsh. She spoke to me as though we'd known each other for years. "Tonight, we are making branzino with roasted potatoes and shaved fennel salad," she said, turning the fish with practiced ease. "Federico's favorite." The words pierced me gently. I thought of all the nights Federico and I had spent together, the intimacy of our silences, the heat of our arguments, the electric pull between us. Yet here was a piece of him I hadn't known, a boyhood favorite, preserved in memory, waiting for his mother's hands. "He always asks for this dish when he returns home," Lucretia continued, her eyes sliding to mine. "And now, I suspect, you will be the one to cook it for him." The laughter and gossip swirled around us. I smiled, but my chest ached with something I couldn't name: yearning, maybe. Or belonging. "Rachel," she gestured to the space beside her. "Come help me with the fish." I took the offered knife, its weight familiar in my hand. The blade was perfectly balanced, sharp enough to slice through bone like butter. Under Lucretia's watchful eye, I began preparing the sea bass, my movements careful but confident. "You handle a knife well," she observed. "I've had practice." The words carried more meaning than their surface suggested, and we both knew it. "I imagine you have," she smiled faintly. She worked beside me in silence for a moment before continuing. "My son is not an easy man to love. Easy men are boring." That earned me a laugh, rich and genuine. "You understand him, then. His nature." I thought of Federico's hands covered in blood, of the way his eyes went cold when discussing business, of how he could order a man's death as easily as ordering wine. I thought, too, of his reverence when he touched me, his fierce protection, the vulnerability he showed only in darkness. "I understand that he has a predatory side," I said quietly, aware that others might hear, and that trying to change him would be like trying to teach a lion to eat grass. Lucretia's hand stilled. She turned to study me with that penetrating gaze. And you? What are you, Rachel? The question hung between us like a challenge. Around us, the other women continued their work, but I felt their attention shift, subtle as a change in wind direction. I'm whatever he needs me to be, I answered. And sometimes, what he needs is another predator. The silence stretched, taut as a held breath. Then Lucretia smiled, a real smile that transformed her face. Good, she said simply, returning to her fish. Weak women don't survive in this family. They certainly don't thrive. The preparation continued with renewed energy. Stories flowed with the wine. Tales of Federico as a boy, wild and brilliant and utterly uncontrollable. He once convinced Ginevra that the garden statues came alive at night. Viola shared, laughing. She wouldn't go outside after dark for months. He was protecting me from ghosts, Ginevra protested. He said they couldn't come inside if I stayed in my room. He was keeping you from seeing his midnight meetings with the groundskeeper's daughter, Lucretia corrected dryly, and the kitchen erupted in laughter. These glimpses of Federico's past felt like puzzle pieces, filling in the picture of how he'd become the man I knew. The boy who protected his sister from imaginary ghosts had become the man who'd put a bullet in Kyle without hesitation when he'd tried to force himself on me. When the meal was ready, the women carried platters out into the courtyard. The long table glowed with candles, glasses catching the firelight. The men returned, voices loud from drink and debate. Federico found me immediately, his hand settling possessively on my waist. You survived the kitchen, he said complimentarily. Your mother is remarkable, I answered humbly, although my heart was leaping with joy. She likes you. It wasn't a question. Federico could read his mother as easily as she read everyone else. That's rare. As tradition dictated, the women served the men first. I followed suit, placing a plate before Federico. His hand brushed mine briefly under the table, a silent acknowledgement. Dinner was a celebration. Jokes passed back and forth, stories retold, wine refilled again and again. I watched Federico laugh with his cousins and uncles, a lightness in him I'd rarely seen. He wasn't the calculating Don-in-waiting here. He was a son, a brother, a man surrounded by his blood. Toward the end, music drifted into the courtyard. A local band appeared, instruments in hand, striking up the quick, infectious rhythm of pizzica. Chairs scraped back as family members paired off, laughter echoing as they spun and clapped in time with the beat. Dance with Rachel. She needs to learn, Ginevra shouted, tugging at Federico's arm. He glanced at me. I shook my head instinctively, panic fluttering in my stomach. But he rose anyway, extending his hand. Come. His eyes left no room for refusal. I placed my hand in his, my heart hammering. The music was unlike anything I'd heard, wild and rhythmic, with an undertone of something ancient and untamed. Federico positioned us facing each other, his hands guiding mine. It's about the chase, he explained, demonstrating the basic steps. The woman tempts, the man pursues. Push and pull, advance and retreat. So, exactly like us. I said, making him laugh. He guided me to the center, his hand firm at my waist, his voice low in my ear as he counted the rhythm. Step, spin, clap. At first I stumbled, but his grip steadied me, his movement sure. Soon I was laughing, breathless, caught in the wild pulse of the music. The family clapped, cheered, shouted encouragement. And when the song ended, Federico kept his arm around my waist, pulling me close. In that moment, surrounded by love and devotion, I felt something surge within me, an ache, sharp and sweet. Baby fever, people called it, but it was more than that. It was the hunger to build something of my own, to claim this belonging, this unity. To be not just his lover, but the mother of his children. Later, as the night wound down, the women cleaned up, dishes stacked, laughter softer now, the air warm with contentment. Federico kissed me goodnight in the privacy of our room, his lips lingering against my forehead. Sleep came slowly, my mind replaying the images of the evening, the glow of candles, Lucretia's approving smile, Federico's laughter. The next day, he brought me to Venice. The canals shimmered, gondolas drifting like whispers across the water. He led me to secret corners only locals seemed to know, shops glowing with silk and glass, cafes where the espresso stung my tongue like fire. I took photos and shared them to my Instagram story, but never of him, never of us. Federico's privacy was sacred, and I protected it as if it were a vow. On our way back, we stopped at Barina Venezia, a boutique known for its effortlessly elegant Italian tailoring, because I needed a change of clothes. I slipped into a linen dress the color of ivory. Federico's eyes lingered as he paid, without hesitation, his hand brushing my hip as though to claim both me and the fabric at once. Now back at the villa, I found myself beside Lucretia again. "Walk with me," she said, as the evening wound down. We strolled through the garden. The moon was full, turning everything silver and shadow. Lucretia led me to a stone bench beneath an ancient olive tree. "I was 20 when I married Federico's father," she began without preamble. "Young, naive, and in love with a dangerous man. I thought love would be enough." She paused, her profile regal in the moonlight. "I learned quickly that love without strength is just another vulnerability in our world. The first time I saw my husband kill a man, I vomited. The second time, I helped him hide the body. The confession should have shocked me. Instead, I found myself leaning closer, hungry for the wisdom she offered. Our eyes met, and I saw myself reflected in her, not as I was, but as I could become. "You have the strength," she said. "I saw it the moment you walked in. But strength without purpose becomes cruelty. Federico needs a woman who can be both his conscience and his accomplice. Someone who can bear sons that will honor the family name and daughters who will expand its influence. Someone who can stand beside him in a cathedral and in a warehouse where blood stains the concrete." She reached into her pocket, pulling out something that caught the moonlight. A ring, ancient gold set with a ruby dark as blood. "This is a family heirloom. It belonged to Federico's grandmother and her mother before that. 7 generations of Clemenza wives have worn it." She placed it in my palm, the metal still warm from her touch. "I'm not giving it to you. Not yet. But I want you to know it exists. When Federico is ready, when you are ready, it will be waiting." The weight of her approval, of her expectations, settled over me like a mantle. "What if I'm not who you think I am?" "Oh, child," Lucretia's laugh was soft but knowing. "I know exactly who you are. You're the woman who chose my son, not despite his darkness, but because of it. You're the one who doesn't flinch when blood spills. You're the girl who grew tired of being ordinary and decided to become legendary instead." She stood, smoothing her skirt. "Any other life would starve your soul, Rachel. You know this. Federico knows this. And now I know it too." As we walked back to the villa, I felt the truth of her words settling into my bones. The normal life I'd planned with Kyle, the suburban house, the conventional marriage, the ordinary dreams, would have suffocated me eventually. I'd been dying by degrees, too afraid to admit I wanted more, until Federico showed me what more could look like. "One more thing," Lucretia said as we reached the door. Federico's father used to say that the strongest families are built on three things: blood, loyalty, and the kind of love that would burn the world down if threatened. You and my son have the third. The rest will come. Inside, Federico was waiting, his jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking more relaxed than I'd ever seen him. He took one look at his mother and me, something passing between them in silent communication. "It's late," Lucretia announced. "Rachel needs rest." She kissed my cheeks, then Federico's, before disappearing into the villa's depths. Federico led me to our room, a suite that overlooked the vineyards, furnished with antiques that whispered of centuries of secrets. "What did she say to you?" he asked as I stood at the window, looking out at the moonlit vines. "She sees me," I said simply. "All of me. And she approves." Federico came up behind me, his arms encircling my waist, his chin resting on my shoulder. "That's not approval, my dear. That's adoption. My mother just claimed you as surely as if you'd been born a Clemenza." "Is that what I am now? A Clemenza?" His lips found my neck, pressing a kiss there that made me shiver. "You're mine. Everything else is just paperwork." That night, in the bed where Federico had slept as a child, surrounded by the ghosts of his ancestry and the promise of our future, I understood what I'd truly chosen. Not just a man, but a dynasty. Not just love, but a legacy written in equal parts blood and devotion. The future would bring more family, more tests, more proof that I belonged in this world of beautiful violence. But tonight, with Federico's arms around me and his family's blessings settling into my bones, I was exactly where I belonged. The girl who'd walked into a poker game to check on her gambling boyfriend was gone. In her place stood a woman who understood that sometimes the greatest love stories are written in darkness, and the happiest endings come with a body count. I was Rachel, future wife of Federico Clemenza and matriarch in the making. I would never apologize for the blood on my hands or the darkness in my heart. This was my family now, my destiny, my choice, and I would burn the world down to keep it. When our time in Italy ended, the family gathered once more to see us off. Lucretia kissed my cheek, her eyes bright. "You have my blessing," she said, "and my son has my approval to marry you." The courtyard rang with farewells, but her words echoed louder in my chest than any of them. As we drove away, Federico reached for my hand, threading his fingers through mine. I looked back at the fading villa, the family waving in the distance, and I felt no fear, only belonging.
Chapter 16. The Matriarch's Oath.
The morning light filters through the silk curtains of Federico's study as I watch him review the family ledgers. 5 months have passed since Kyle's blood stained my former apartment floor, and I've learned to read the subtle signs of tension in Federico's shoulders. Today, they carry the weight of impending change. "There's something you need to see," he says without looking up, his voice carrying that particular gravity I've come to recognize. He slides a velvet box across the mahogany desk, not toward me, but to the side, as if it's merely another piece of business. I don't reach for it immediately. I've learned patience from him, learned to let moments breathe before seizing them. "Roberto Vieri's wife, Amanda, has been talking," Federico continues, finally meeting my eyes. The ice-blue depth of them still makes my pulse quicken, even now. "She's been spreading poison about you at the wives' gatherings, questioning your legitimacy." The word hangs between us like a challenge. I think of Amanda's pinched face at the charity dinner months ago, the way she looked down her nose at me as if I were something distasteful she'd stepped in. What kind of poison? I ask, though I can guess. Women like Amanda always attack the same vulnerabilities: breeding, background, worthiness. She says you're Federico's plaything, a temporary distraction who thinks she belongs at the table with real wives. His fingers drum once against the desk. She's rallying the other women, creating instability. I understand now why the box sits untouched between us. This isn't a romantic proposal, it's a strategic maneuver, a consolidation of power. You want me to handle her, I say. Federico's smile is sharp as a blade. I want to know if you're ready to claim what's yours. I reach for the box, feeling the weight of it, not just the ring inside, but everything it represents. The Clemenza family crest is engraved on the top, and when I open it, the diamond catches the morning light like captured fire. It's beautiful, yes, but it's more than that. It's armor. Tell me about the dinner party, I say, because I already know there will be one. Saturday night. The wives will gather at the Vieri estate for Amanda's birthday celebration. Federico leans back in his chair, studying me with the same intensity he once reserved for chess moves. She's planned it as a demonstration of her social dominance. Every significant family will be represented, including us. Including you. The distinction isn't lost on me. This will be my performance, my test. I slip the ring onto my finger, feeling its unfamiliar weight settle against my skin. What's her weakness? Pride and her son, William, her golden child who's been skimming from the family's legitimate businesses. She doesn't know we know. The plan crystallizes in my mind like frost forming on glass. Amanda Vieri thinks she can humiliate me, reduce me to the role of grateful interloper. She has no idea what she's unleashed. Saturday evening arrives wrapped in autumn's chill. I choose my armor carefully. A black Ralph Lauren dress that speaks of understated elegance, my hair pulled back in a chignon that shows off a pair of Cartier diamond drop earrings. I look the part of a mafia wife, but more importantly, I feel it in my bones. The Vieri mansion is a monument to old money and older prejudices. Amanda greets me at the door with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Rachel, darling," she says, her voice dripping false sweetness. "How appropriate of you to come." The slight is deliberate, designed to put me on the defensive. But I've learned from Federico that the most devastating attacks come wrapped in silk. "Amanda," I reply, taking her hands in mine with apparent warmth. "You look absolutely radiant. 55 suits you beautifully." Her smile falters for just a moment. She's actually 57, and we both know it. The evening unfolds like a carefully choreographed dance. The wives circle each other with practiced smiles and hidden claws. I can feel their eyes on me, measuring, judging, waiting for me to make a misstep that will confirm their suspicions about my unsuitability. Linda Benucci, wife of the Mafia family's enforcer, tries to draw me into gossip about the legitimate businesses. Maria Forrest attempts to exclude me from discussions about charity work, as if my contributions are somehow lesser. But I navigate each trap with growing confidence, my ring catching the light like a promise of retribution. The moment comes during dessert, when Amanda raises her wine glass for a toast. "To friendship," she says, her eyes finding mine across the table. "And to knowing one's place in this world." The silence that follows is pregnant with expectation. Every woman at this table knows what's happening. Amanda is making her move, establishing her dominance in front of witnesses. I stand slowly, my own glass in hand. To friendship, indeed, and to the bonds that make us family. I pause, letting my words settle. "Amanda, I have a confession to make." Her eyes narrow slightly, but she maintains her hostess smile. "When I first met you, I was intimidated. Here was a woman who'd been part of this world for decades, who knew all the rules, all the traditions. I take a sip of wine, tasting victory on my tongue. I thought to myself, how can I ever measure up to someone with such experience? The other wives shift in their seats, sensing the current change. But then I realized something beautiful about our life, about this family we've all married into. It's not about how long you've been here. It's about what you contribute, what you protect. I walk slowly around the table, my heels clicking against marble. Which is why I felt I had to speak with Roberto about William. The name lands like a stone in still water. About his creative accounting with the harbor contracts. Amanda's face goes white. I don't know what you mean. Of course you don't. A good mother always believes the best of her children. I stop behind her chair, placing a gentle hand on her shoulder. But a good wife protects the family's interests above all else, even above her own son. The silence is deafening. Every woman here understands what's happening. I've just revealed that Amanda's precious boy is a liability, and worse, that she failed to control it. The books have been corrected. I continue softly. William will be redirected to more suitable pursuits, and the family will remain strong. I return to my seat, raising my glass once more, to friendship, and to knowing exactly where we belong. The toast is echoed around the table, but the power dynamic has shifted irrevocably. Amanda sits frozen, her birthday celebration transformed into her public diminishment. Later, as we prepare to leave, Linda Benucci approaches me in the powder room. "That was elegantly done," she says, refreshing her lipstick. Amanda needed to be reminded that loyalty flows upward, not down. "I simply spoke the truth," I reply, though we both know it was far more calculated than that. "Federico chose well," she continues. "The family needs women who understand the weight of our position." When I emerge from the mansion, Federico is waiting by the car, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. "How did it go?" he asks as we drive away. "Amanda Vieri will never question my place again," I tell him. "And the other wives know where I stand." He reaches over, taking my hand and running his thumb over the engagement ring. "And where is that, exactly?" I turn to meet his gaze, seeing not just the dangerous man who claimed me, but the future Don who will reshape this city in our image. "Beside you," I say simply, "as your equal, as your queen." His smile is predatory and proud in equal measure. "Then let's make it official." The cathedral looms before us like a monument to divine inevitability. I stand at the altar wearing a Tahitian pearl and a gorgeous Alexander McQueen wedding dress, but it's the look in Federico's eyes that makes me feel truly beautiful. When the priest asks for my vase, I speak the words that will bind us not just in love, but in purpose. To love, honor, cherish, and obey until death parts us. The obey draws disapproving frowns from some of the younger wives' faces, but I don't care. They don't understand that real power sometimes lies in the conscious choice to surrender it. As Federico slips the wedding band onto my finger, sealing it against the engagement ring, I feel the final piece of my transformation click into place. I am no longer Rachael Hathaway, the marketing assistant who let herself be wagered like a poker chip. I am Rachel Clemenza. And this family, this dangerous, beautiful, blood-soaked family, is mine to protect.
Chapter 17. Last Rite of the Brother.
The call comes at 3 a.m, piercing through the silk curtains and expensive sheets like a blade through flesh. Federico's phone buzzes against the nightstand, and I feel him tense beside me even before he answers. "See," he says, his voice immediately alert despite the hour. I don't need to hear the other side of the conversation. I can read the grief in the set of his shoulders, the way his free hand clenches into a fist against the covers. Borini is gone. 7 months of marriage have taught me to recognize the exact moment when Federico the husband transforms into Federico the Don. It happens now, as he listens to the voice on the other end, probably Roberto Vieri, calling with the news we've all been expecting yet dreading. "I'll be there in an hour," Federico says, then ends the call. For a moment, we lie in silence. Outside our window, New York sleeps on, unaware that power has just shifted in the shadows. "How long do we have?" Ask softly. "The news will spread by dawn. The funeral must be perfect. Every detail, every gesture will be scrutinized." He turns to look at me, and in the dim light, I can see both sorrow and calculation in his eyes. "This is your first test as La Regina." I sit up, letting the silk sheet fall away from my shoulders. "What do you need?" "Everything." His hand finds mine, grips it tightly. The church arrangements, the flower displays, the seating charts for the reception. The wives will watch every move you make, looking for signs of weakness or inexperience. I think of Amanda Vieri, still smarting from her public humiliation at her birthday dinner. She'll be hoping I stumble. That grief will make me careless. "I won't fail you. I promise." Federico's smile is sharp with pride and pain. "I know you won't." The funeral preparations consume me like a fever. I've transformed our dining room into a command center, with lists and timelines spread across the mahogany table like battle plans. Which, in a way, they are. Amelia from the florist calls twice about the arrangements. I've ordered white lilies and blood-red roses, traditional, respectful, but with enough drama to remind everyone who they're dealing with. The church has been reserved, the catering arranged, the musicians scheduled. But it's the politics that require the most delicate touch. "Mrs. Clemenza," Roberto Vieri says when he arrives to discuss the guest list. There's still a slight coolness in his voice. He hasn't forgotten what I did to his wife, but he respects it. "The Benucci family wants to sit in the third row, but the Forrest family claims precedence based on their longer association with Borini." I look up from my notes, studying his weathered face. Roberto has been managing family politics since before I was born, yet here he is, deferring to my judgment. The Benucci sit in the third row, I decide. Their contributions to family security during Borini's illness earn them that honor. The Forrest family will understand. Their time of prominence was under the previous Don. Roberto nods approvingly. A wise choice. It establishes your husband's priorities while respecting tradition. The morning of the funeral dawns gray and heavy with the promise of rain. I dress carefully in black Chanel, my hair pulled back severely, diamonds at my throat and ears, understated but unmistakable markers of my position. Federico emerges from his dressing room looking like he was born to wear funeral blacks. The suit is perfectly tailored, the tie a whisper of silk, but it's the way he carries himself that announces his new status to the world. "Are you ready?" he asks. I take his arm, feeling the solid warmth of him beneath the expensive fabric. "We're ready." The cathedral is packed. Every significant family from the 5 boroughs is represented, along with politicians, judges, and businessmen whose connection to our world remains carefully unofficial. I can feel their eyes on us as we walk down the aisle, the new Don and his wife, stepping into roles that will reshape the landscape of power in this city. Lucretia, Federico's mother, sits in the front row wearing the black veil of mourning. When she sees me, she nods almost imperceptibly, a gesture of approval that doesn't go unnoticed by the watching wives. The service is conducted in both English and Italian, honoring Borini's Old World roots while acknowledging the reality of our American present. When it comes time for the family to pay their respects, I walk beside Federico to the casket, my steps measured and dignified. But it's at the reception afterward that the real ceremony takes place. The wives gather in the private dining room of Delborough Hotel, the same venue where I first impressed the family months ago. Now, instead of being the outsider looking in, I'm the one they look to for guidance. Linda Benucci approaches first. Mrs. Clemenza, my condolences on your family's loss. If there's anything the Benucci family can do. Thank you, Linda. Your loyalty during this difficult time means everything to us. One by one, they come to pay their respects, not just to the memory of Barini, but to my new position as the family's First Lady. Even Amanda Vieri, her pride thoroughly humbled, offers her condolences with apparent sincerity. You've done beautifully, she says quietly. Barini would have been proud to see the family in such capable hands. It's as close to an apology as I'll ever get from her, and I accept it graciously. But it's Maria Forrest who provides the moment that crystallizes my new role. She approaches with her daughter Zara, a nervous-looking girl of 19 who's recently become engaged to a soldier in the Benucci crew. Mrs. Clemenza, Maria says, I was hoping you might speak with Zara about the adjustments required in this life. The responsibilities of being a family wife. I look at the girl, so young, so uncertain, and see myself as I was just over a year ago. Naive, unprepared for the darkness that would become my salvation. Of course, I say, taking Zara's trembling hand. Why don't we step outside for some air? The hotel's private garden is quiet except for the distant sound of traffic. I guide Zara to a marble bench beneath a flowering tree, the spring blossoms a stark contrast to the black of our funeral attire. Are you frightened? I ask gently. She nods, tears threatening to spill over. My mother says I don't understand what I'm getting into, that this life will change me in ways I can't imagine. I think of Kyle bleeding on my apartment floor while Federico claimed me with primitive hunger. Of the way I felt nothing but desire as my former fiancé died. Of the woman I've become, harder, more calculating, but also more alive than I ever dreamed possible. Your mother is right. I tell her honestly. This life will change you. It will demand things of you that other women never have to consider. You'll need to be stronger, more resilient, more willing to make difficult choices. Zara's face crumples. Then maybe I shouldn't. But I continue, covering her hands with mine. It will also give you power beyond anything you can imagine. Purpose. A family that will die for you, just as you would die for them. Love that burns deeper than anything safe or conventional. I look back toward the hotel, where our husbands conduct business that shapes the hidden currents of a city. The question isn't whether this life will change you, I tell her. The question is whether you're brave enough to become who you're meant to be. When we return to the reception, I notice the subtle shift in how the other wives look at me. Word has spread about my conversation with Zara about the guidance I offered. They're beginning to see me not just as Federico's wife, but as their leader. That evening, after the last guests have departed and the hotel staff have cleared away the remnants of Barini's funeral reception, Federico and I return home to the mansion that is now truly ours. He pours 2 glasses of Prologue, the same wine we shared on my first night in his house, when I was still his captive rather than his queen. To Barini, he says, raising his glass. To Barini, I echo. And to the family he leaves in our care. We drink in companionable silence, the weight of new responsibilities settling over us like a mantle. The wives look to you now, Federico observes. I watch them tonight. You've become their anchor. I think of Amanda's subdued respect, Linda's open admiration, Maria's request for guidance with her daughter. Just over a year ago, I was nobody, a marketing assistant whose biggest decision was which campaign to pitch to small businesses. Now, Women who've been part of this world for decades defer to my judgment. They need someone who understands what it means to choose this life, I say. Someone who wasn't born into it, but claimed it anyway. Federico sets down his glass and moves closer, his hands framing my face with tender reverence. La Regina, he murmurs, using the title he's begun calling me. My queen. When he kisses me, it tastes like wine and triumph and the promise of all the darkness yet to come. Tomorrow, the real work begins. Tomorrow, we start building our legacy. But tonight, we mourn the past and celebrate the future stretching out before us like an uncharted map of shadows and gold.
Chapter 18. The Promised Legacy.
The morning sickness hits me like a revelation wrapped in nausea. I'm bent over the marble vanity in our bathroom, my silk robe clinging to skin that feels too hot, too sensitive, when the truth crashes over me with startling clarity. I know before the test confirms it. I know in a way my body feels different, electric with new purpose. I know in the sudden tenderness of my breasts, the way certain smells make me recoil. I know because something fundamental has shifted in the very center of me. The plastic stick trembles in my hands as two pink lines materialize like destiny made manifest. Pregnant. I sink onto the velvet chaise by the window, cradling the test against my chest as if it might disappear if I don't hold it carefully enough. Outside, New York sprawls beneath a canopy of autumn leaves, the city Federico and I have claimed as our kingdom. Soon, there will be someone else to inherit this dangerous legacy we've built. The irony doesn't escape me. A year and a half ago, I was wagered like property in a poker game. Now I carry the future of the most powerful crime family on the East Coast. Federico is in his study, dealing with the endless details that come with running an empire. He's been Don for 3 months now, and I've watched him grow into the role like it was tailored for him. The weight of leadership suits him, makes his already formidable presence even more compelling. But this changes everything. I dress carefully, choosing a cream-colored dress that doesn't cling, that won't reveal what I'm not yet ready to share with the world. I tuck the pregnancy test into my jewelry box, beneath the Clemenza family heirloom Lucretia gave me on our wedding day, just as she promised. Downstairs, I find Federico exactly where I expected, behind his mahogany desk, reviewing reports from our various operations. He looks up when I enter, and that familiar heat flickers in his ice blue eyes. "Good morning, my love," he says, rising to greet me with a kiss that still makes my pulse quicken. "You look radiant." If only he knew how literally true that might be. I thought I'd visit the chapel, light a candle for Barini. I tell him, it's not entirely a lie. I do want to visit the chapel, but not just for his brother. Federico nods approvingly. "Take one of the bodyguards with you. I don't want you going alone." The protectiveness in his voice will only intensify once he knows. The thought thrills me. The chapel attached to our estate is small but exquisite, all marble and stained glass that throws rainbow patterns across the stone floor. This is where Federico first kissed me, where he spoke of legacy and the matriarch his family expected him to find. Now I kneel before the altar, my hands pressed together in prayer, and wonder if this is what he meant. If destiny has been pulling us toward this moment from the very beginning. "I thought I might find you here." Federico's voice echoes softly in the sacred space. I turn to see him standing in the doorway, still wearing his business suit, but somehow looking entirely natural in this holy place. "You said you were reviewing the harbor contracts," I say. "They can wait." He moves toward me with that predatory grace I've never tired of watching. My wife is more important than any business. When he kneels beside me on the prayer cushions, I feel the solid warmth of his presence, like an anchor in the storm of my thoughts. "What are you praying for?" he asks softly. I could deflect, could offer some gentle lie about peace or guidance. Instead, I find myself speaking the truth. "The future," I whisper. "Our future." Federico's hand finds mine, his thumb tracing over my wedding rings with unconscious reverence. "What kind of future are you imagining?" I turn to face him fully. "I'm pregnant," I say simply. The words seem to echo in the sacred space, taking on weight and power as they settle between us. Federico goes very still, his eyes searching my face, as if looking for confirmation that this isn't some beautiful dream. "You're certain?" His voice is rough with emotion he's trying to control. "I took the test this morning, but I think I've known for days. Maybe longer." I place my free hand over my still flat stomach. Something's different. Something's awakening. Federico's control finally breaks. He pulls me into his arms with desperate hunger, burying his face in my neck as if he's drowning and I'm his salvation. "My God," he breathes against my skin. "My queen. My magnificent queen." When he pulls back to look at me, there are tears in his eyes. Tears I've never seen from this man who faces down rivals and death threats without flinching. "A son," he says with quiet certainty. "Or a daughter," I counter, amused by his assumption. "A son first, to carry on the name and tradition." His hands frame my face with reverent care. But then daughters. Beautiful, fierce daughters like their mother. The future he's painting feels as real as the marble beneath our knees. I can see it, a house filled with children who will grow up knowing their power, their purpose, who will understand that they are part of something larger than themselves. What kind of world are we bringing them into? I ask, though I already know the answer. Federico's smile is sharp as a blade and twice as beautiful. Our world. A world where they will want for nothing, fear no one, and command respect through strength and legacy. He stands, pulling me up with him, and leads me deeper into the chapel. At the very front, beneath the stained glass window that depicts angels and demons locked in eternal battle, he drops to one knee. Not in proposal this time, since we're already bound by law and choice and blood spilled in love's name. This is something else. Something deeper. "I swear to you," he says, his voice carrying the weight of sacred vows, "that I will build an empire worthy of our children. That they will inherit not just power, but purpose. Not just wealth, but wisdom." He takes my hands, pressing them against his heart. "I swear that anyone who threatens what we've created will face the full fury of my protection. That our children will know they are loved, valued, and destined for greatness." The tears I've been holding back finally spill over. "And I swear to you that I will teach them strength. That I will show them how to claim their place in this world and hold it against any challenge." I cup his face in my hands, feeling the slight roughness of stubble against my palms. "We'll raise them better than we were raised. I promise. But we won't raise them soft." Federico rises, sealing our new covenant with a kiss that tastes like wine and danger and the promise of legacy. When we break apart, the chapel bells begin to toll in the distance. Whether for evening prayers or some other call to worship, I don't know. But it feels like benediction anyway. That evening, we celebrate privately, with champagne for Federico and sparkling water for me, toasting the future we've set in motion. He's already making plans, additional security, renovations to create a nursery, calls to the family doctor who delivered both him and his brother. The wives will be beside themselves with excitement. I observe, curling against his side on our leather sofa. Linda's been dropping hints about children for months. Let them speculate a while longer, Federico says, his hand moving protectively over my stomach. This stays between us until we're ready to share it. I understand his caution. In our world, pregnancy makes a woman both precious and vulnerable. There will be time enough for public celebration once I'm safely past the first trimester. How do you think your mother will react? I ask. Federico's smile is soft with genuine affection. She'll probably fly back from Italy immediately to start planning the nursery. The thought of Lucretia fussing over baby clothes and cribs makes me laugh. The formidable matriarch of the Clemenza family, reduced to a doting nana-in-waiting. As if summoned by our conversation, Federico's phone buzzes with a text. He glances at it, then shows me the screen, a photo from his sister Viola, showing her own children playing in the gardens of their Florence home. They'll have cousins, he observes. A whole generation to grow up together, to understand their heritage. I study the photo of Federico's niece and nephew, seeing echoes of his features in their young faces. Our children will share that bloodline, that legacy of power and purpose. Do you ever wonder, I ask softly, if we're selfish for bringing children into this life? Federico considers the question with the seriousness he brings to all my concerns. Every parent wonders if they're giving their children enough, safe enough, normal enough. He turns to look at me, his eyes reflecting the firelight. But normal is overrated, my love. Normal is boring, predictable, ultimately meaningless. He's right, of course. I think of the woman I used to be, trapped in mediocrity, accepting scraps of affection from a man who saw me as property. That was normal. That was safe. This, on the other hand, is extraordinary. Our children will know they matter. I say with growing conviction. They'll know they have purpose, destiny, power to shape the world around them. And they'll know they're loved, Federico adds, his hand tightening possessively over mine. Completely, fiercely, without condition or reservation. As the evening deepens around us, I think about the family portrait we'll one day commission, Federico and me at the center, our children arrayed around us like a promise of continuity. The photographer will capture our formal poses, our expensive clothes, our carefully arranged expressions. But they won't capture the real story. They won't show the blood that baptized our love, the choices that forged us into the people we've become. They won't reveal the darkness we've embraced, the power we've claimed, the legacy we're determined to protect. That story will live in whispered family legends, in the lessons we teach our children when they're old enough to understand the weight of their inheritance. The church bells toll midnight, marking the end of one day and the beginning of another. Soon enough, those same bells will ring out announcements of births and baptisms, of new life taking its place in an old and dangerous world. I place my hand over my stomach, imagining the tiny life growing there. Boy or girl, they will be born into privilege and peril, surrounded by love and violence in equal measure. And they will be magnificent, just as we are magnificent. Federico and I, the Don and his queen, writing the future in blood and devotion and the unbreakable bonds of chosen family. The dynasty continues, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
You've now reached the end of this audiobook. If you enjoyed the story, please like and subscribe. It encourages us to bring you more. And if you'd like to support what we're doing here, giving this video some love would mean a lot. Thanks for being part of this book-loving corner of the internet.